Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios here on what is known as Black Monday. David is in for Ian today, and we have a lot to get to off the top. Let's start, obviously, with the latest surrounding the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, Mike Vrabel, as we await to find out whether or not Vrabel will make it through Black Monday. Now, there is a lot to jump in. And so, again, you heard the update in which Nick said that, again, I had the report earlier today on the midday show. But let's just recap everything off the top so that we're all kind of caught up along the same lines, unless anybody has a problem with that. So, we've been keeping an eye throughout the entire season on Vrabel and what he says and the pot shots, it feels like, that come out of his mouth because, well, Vrabel can be a little passive-aggressive sometimes. And then last week he was active about, of course I want to stay here. Of course I want to be the coach as long as we can win. That's what he said last week. But I knew that once we got to Black Monday, this was when it was really going to pick up. And yesterday and over the weekend, it started to. Adam Schefter had his report about how the coaching position with the Titans was unsettled. Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, echoing a similar thought. I said yesterday on the pregame show that what I was told by a league source was that Mike Vrabel thought Ryan Cowden was going to be the next general manager of the Titans, and then he was surprised to find out that it was Ran Carthon. And that perhaps that maybe whittled away a little bit of the trust between Vrabel and ownership. Then we got to today. More rumors coming out that are all kind of the same, right? Ian Rappaport, there will be meetings, Ian Rappaport says. Jordan Schultz saying Vrabel would be interested in the Patriots job, but the Patriots job comes open. And so on and so forth. So instead of a typical grid like I normally do where this is what we're talking about, 2 o'clock, 2:15, 2:30, I knew that today we were going to be going all over the place and talking about all the rumors and that would be constantly changing. So all day today, I kept with me kind of notes of what was going on at what time, what I was hearing, what was being said, what was being reported, and then kind of what my opinion stemming off some of those were. So at around 10:38 a.m., I saw that Ryan Tannehill had said during the locker clean out that there was no team meeting. But sometimes, I think Paul Karski put this out there, sometimes there isn't a team meeting, sometimes there are. And then at 11:09, I saw that Will Levis said that Mike Vrabel told them that he will let them know. Which means there could be something that comes out of this. Then I talked to a league source. Again, just to sum it up, Mike Vrabel is going to be meeting with ownership today. He is probably meeting with ownership right now. Mike Vrabel wants someone over him and Ran Carthon. He does not want final say. He does not want to be the general manager. But he wants somebody in there that does have final say, period. Vrabel is going in there and demanding these things. Now, he's under contract. So who knows if Titans ownership says no, and they say we won't fire you. But normally there is a little bit of a, hey, if he doesn't want to be here, we're going to have to do something as far as this situation is concerned. And I was told by that league source, do not rule out Vrabel being fired. And apparently there have been some blow-ups in the past between Amy Adams Strunk and Mike Vrabel, what I've been told. And the frustration Vrabel has, according to this league source, is not with Ran Carthon, but it is on the business model of the grand collaboration that we have heard so much about. Vrabel also wants more defined roles and a delegation to Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson, the assistant general manager, or the two assistant general managers that the Titans have. Which takes me to this, and this is total speculation on my part. But I have been talking with league sources. I've been talking with people who know. I've been talking with people who know. And again, it's a giant game of telephone. But I am going to tell you that as we sit here at 2:06 p.m., I do not think that Mike Vrabel will be the coach of the 2024 Tennessee Titans. In fact, I heard from somebody today that thought there was a chance that last night Mike Vrabel would not be the coach of the 2024 Tennessee Titans. Now, I don't know what the end game here is, and I'm not sure any one side in any of this, Vrabel, Carthon, and the Titans, I'm not sure that any one side can today put their stake down in the ground and say, well, this is what we're going to do. And here's why. Let's start with Vrabel. Again, Vrabel is clearly unhappy with the structure of the organization. And I understand, because I am unhappy with the structure of the organization. But if Mike Vrabel goes into ownership and he demands that they get a president of football operations or somebody who's in charge, what's he going to do if they say no? Is he going to quit? He can't quit and go to the Patriots. And there's a lot of money that he would be giving up on with his contract for next year, the year after, and then the Titans also have an option on 2026, reportedly. So if Vrabel can talk a big game about, well, this is what I want, this is what I demand, I'm unhappy about this, I'm unhappy about that, but his only recourse here would be to quit. And Ohio State does not currently have an opening for a head coach. So what's the plan B for Vrabel if the Titans just fold their arms and say no? Then that takes us to Ran Carthon. If they were to acquiesce to Mike Vrabel's wishes, which I actually would be in favor of, although it's not, again, I have been on record of what I would do as I'd clean house, and this is exactly why, by the way, that I'd clean house, but that's a different discussion. But if they do bring somebody in to oversee Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel, that will essentially be a demotion for Ran Carthon. Instead of a, does Ran Carthon have final say of the roster? It will be a, we know Ran Carthon does not have final say of the roster. He can still be the general manager in title, but that doesn't mean that he'll be the general manager in principle. And that would be a demotion. And there is already a narrative that is out there that is the NFL forced Ran Carthon upon the Titans, or suggested Ran Carthon to the Titans as a minority hire, which is completely unfair if it's not true, and I have no idea if it is or isn't, but that narrative exists, and by essentially demoting Ran Carthon, it would be playing in to giving credence to that narrative. But if you're Ran Carthon and they demote you by bringing in somebody else because that's what Vrabel wants, what are you going to do, up and quit? Can you up and quit? Again, that's a lot of money he'd be walking away from, and I don't think he necessarily would want to do that. And then there is the question of what's in Ran Carthon's contract. Is final say over the roster in Ran Carthon's contract? It was in John Robinson's contract. I'm guessing it's not in Ran Carthon's contract. So if they brought somebody in to be the president of football operations and they gave that person final say over the roster, I don't know if there's something contractually that Ran Carthon can do. So there's a lot of money, again, into Ran, and a lot of money for Ran on the table, that if he were essentially demoted by them acquiescing to Vrabel's wishes, that again, we have to consider. Then there's the Titans in all of this. Again, I talked to somebody today who told me inside the building, they thought there was a chance Vrabel was getting fired last night. That's what I heard. Now, I don't know what that means, and I was told again by a league source earlier today, I was told, do not rule out Vrabel getting fired. But if you're the Titans and you fire Mike Vrabel today, Vrabel walks in, Vrabel demands these changes, and you say, no, we're going to fire you instead, Mike, then you lose Mike Vrabel for nothing. And there will be a market as far as a trade is concerned when it comes to Mike Vrabel. So there's all these moving parts here. Then there's the reality about trading in the NFL. And the reality about trading is this. As easy as it is to say, trade him to the Patriots. And I am sure on some level or another, the Patriots want Mike Vrabel. I think, and again, total conjecture on my part, I think Robert Kraft wants to hire Mike Vrabel as his head coach. The problem is he's under contract with the Titans. But if you want to trade with New England, here's what has to happen. Nobody is allowed to have an in-person meeting with anybody else who is under contract with a team until the divisional round of the playoffs. So let's say you wanted to interview Bobby Slowick of the Houston Texans, the offensive coordinator, to be your head coach. Well, you have to wait 2 weeks. How do you know you're going to get Bobby Slowick? There may be 6 other jobs, and one of those jobs might be a better landing spot for Bobby Slowick. Are you going to wait 2 weeks with Vrabel in purgatory while all these other coaches are putting together their coaching staff for next season? What about your coaching staff for next season? So that's the first thing. Like, that is the first part of this that, hey, you got to wait if you want to interview external candidates. You also have to interview 2 minority candidates that are outside of the organization. Now, you could do it by making a mockery of the Rooney Rule and interviewing, say, Marvin Lewis and Derek Mason, the MTSU coach. But those are 2 guys that we all know you're not going to hire. And the Titans have been sued for unfair practices by interviewing Ray Horton in what seems allegedly is a sham interview that they probably don't want the optics of, well, we interviewed Johnny from over there, and go ahead and tell us that we're good on that. So the Titans are going to have to interview 2 minority external candidates, plus the Titans are going to have to wait until the divisional round before any of these moving chairs can go. Which again says, all right, if you're going to fire Mike Vrabel, you need to know who you're going to hire. But there's no way to do that. The league rules make it that way. If you're going to trade Mike Vrabel, the team that you're trading Mike Vrabel to will want to execute the deal as soon as possible. Well, they have to interview external minority candidates too. Maybe they want to talk to Ben Johnson before they decide they want to go with Mike Vrabel. They have to wait until the divisional round of the playoffs. So a lot of people are trying to make what is incredibly complicated between Vrabel, Amy, Rand, the Patriots, the Commanders, the rest of the league, Bobby Slowick, whoever could be on your list for potential head coach. Everybody's trying to make this, they're trying to view this a lot simpler than it actually is. This is incredibly complex. And somebody's going to make a decision that they're not going to like, that is not going to put them in an advantageous position. Whether it's Rand Carthon sucking it up and essentially being demoted if Vrabel gets his wish of a president of football operations to oversee Vrabel and Carthon. Similar to what Tom Coughlin did years ago in Jacksonville while Dave Caldwell stayed as the general manager and the offensive line coach, his name escapes me right now, from Syracuse, big guy, Doug Marrone. Doug Marrone was the head coach. Mike Caldwell was the general manager. Dave Caldwell was the general manager. But Tom Coughlin was the overseer, the czar of football. That is what Vrabel is demanding right now with ownership, or today. He is demanding that with ownership. So somebody's going to have to do something they don't like here. And I don't know who's going to do what. And somebody said, well, these are all possibilities. There's no one thing that, well, that's because the possibilities are being discussed right now as to what are the Titans going to do. And the one thing I will tell everybody, this is not college football. So we can take a deep breath. Season ended yesterday. The Titans don't have to decide exactly what to do right now. They don't have to decide right here, right now. this moment, this second, exactly what to do. In fact, the last time the Titans went looking for a coach, they couldn't interview anybody until the divisional round of the playoffs because they made it to the divisional round of the playoffs. And the reason I bring that up is because, well, they did okay last time in the hiring cycle, finding a football coach. So as much as everybody wants to know right now, what went down in the meeting? Is he coming back? Is he not coming back? I don't think they've made up their mind. How are they going to break apart with Mike Vrabel? Is it going to be a trade? Is it going to be something where the Titans are sitting on this for 3 weeks and it is 3 weeks of, well, we don't know and we're figuring it out and we're working through it and I want to say Barry Trotz took like 6 weeks after the hockey season was over before he decided what he wanted to do. So there's going to be some of this. We don't know what's going to happen in New England. We don't know what's going to happen in Washington. They just hired a basketball general manager to oversee their search. Which, by the way, I think is kind of stupid, but that's neither here nor there. So there's a lot of moving parts in this right now. But again, big picture, if you want me to simplify this for you, I do not think Mike Vrabel will return as head coach in 2024. So that's where we are. 615-737-1025. We will get to you today. 615-737-1025. And we will, again, continue if we hear anything. Again, I've been on my phone all day today, just talking with different people and hearing people inside the league, people that used to be in the league, people that are connected to people, that's just talking to everybody and just seeing kind of where, they see things sitting right now with the Titans. And again, I told you, it sounds like as of right now, Vrabel is in there with ownership and Vrabel is demanding that they make some organizational changes. But my own personal speculation is I don't think Vrabel will be back. And I can't tell you how they're going to do it, whether it will be an outright firing, which again, a league source told me today, do not rule it out, or if this is going to be a long drawn out process which ends up in a trade of Mike Vrabel to the Patriots. 615-737-1025. We will get to you and your reaction to this coming up here on Stillman and Company, a Titans Monday and a Titans Black Monday here today on the program. Let's talk about Window Nation. WindowNation.com. You know I love the fine folks at Window Nation. Winter is here. So talk to the pros at Window Nation. Don't talk to somebody like me about windows. Talk to the experts. Window Nation, they've got their experts that have done over 11,000 on average windows. That's a lot of windows. And you're adding value to your home when you get with Window Nation, and it's more affordable than you think because Window Nation is currently offering no interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. Do not wait. Get with one of their expert design consultants today. Given the fact that the weather, again, has gone up and down and up and down and up and down, you want to make sure you got the right windows for your home, and let's add some value as well. That's right. So again, don't wait. Simply call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. There you go. That was Vrabel during the Titans bye week, up there being inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame. And that was one of my all-time favorite Vrabel moments, interactions, was we're hosting the show, and I teased the segment by saying, Mike Vrabel's not going to like this topic. And then we talked about it for half a segment. They traded Kevin Byard. We moved on to that. And then the next day, Gentry Estes asked Vrabel about those comments. And he said, well, who's parsing it? I raised my hand, and that started the whole thing. And I felt like on that day when Vrabel got very defensive about those Patriot comments, I didn't feel like, a lot of people have been texting in saying, you've been bashing Vrabel because he got on you at the press conference. That doesn't bother me. I seriously do not care. He might be gone tomorrow. Doesn't bother me. But what I did feel was I did feel like I kind of struck something there, right? Like I'm digging for oil, and, I think I might have got something there. And I think that's why Vrabel got so angry and so defensive. And now it looks like, again, that started to come to fruition. So somebody texted into the text line, our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and said, so what your source is saying is that Mike Vrabel does not want Rand Carthon to have final say. I can only tell you what the source said. The source said to me that Mike Vrabel is going to demand from ownership that they hire somebody to be over him and Rand Carthon. So if you want to interpret that as the source is saying Vrabel doesn't want Rand Carthon to have final say, you can interpret it that way. Pretty hard not to interpret it that way. But I think Vrabel wants somebody to have final say that is above he and Rand, and he doesn't want it to be him. And I absolutely think that's a power play. I absolutely think, but again, when it comes to a power play, right? Like, I don't think Vrabel is doing this because he wants more power himself. I think Vrabel is doing this, and I'm going to give Vrabel some credit here. I think Vrabel is doing this because Mike Vrabel doesn't want to be put in a situation where the functionality of the organization, how they operate, he does not see as conducive to winning. And so he doesn't want to put himself in that position of having to work for that collaboration with which A, he didn't sign up for, and B, he doesn't think's going to work. So it's like, all right, if I'm here and you're already mad at me, and again, I think ownership is already mad at Vrabel. They're already mad at me, and I don't think the way you've set it up for us to be successful can work. I'm going to tell you that I don't think that the way that you've set it up for this to be successful, I don't think that this can work. And so I'll give Vrabel credit for that if that's how he really feels. Texter into the text line says, if the Patriots do want to move on from Belichick, why not complete the transformation to Patriot South and hire or trade for Belichick? It's hard to argue that the dude isn't qualified. Well, I would just say that we have enough problems with the coaching staff here. Last year, Belichick hired a defensive coordinator and a special teams coach to work with a second-year quarterback. If that doesn't scream to you incompetent, if that doesn't scream to you doesn't have the fastball anymore, I don't know what else will. The Patriots are terrible now. And it's because of Belichick. And see, maybe I view Belichick differently than everybody else from the prism of how I analyze his career. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's probably the greatest coach who ever lived. And he made the decision to go with Tom Brady over Drew Bledsoe, which I'm not sure most coaches would have done. So you got to give him credit for that. And those 6 Super Bowls, he did win those. But in the 4 years post Brady, they've been terrible. And I think of it like any other coach, right? Let's say Bill Belichick got hired in the year 2000. You're inheriting a team that's probably not that good. You're inheriting a football team because most coaches inherit teams that aren't very good. So you're inheriting a football team that's not very good. You got to figure out the quarterback position, which, again, most open jobs. If you take the Falcons job today, you're inheriting a team that's not very good, and you've got to figure out the quarterback position. And in 4 years, Bill's been terrible. Anybody else would get fired. So why am I inviting that? So no, I'm not interested in Bill Belichick. Texter says, I think Vrabel just wants someone else other than Amy Adams Strunk making final decisions where there are difference in opinions between him and Rand Carthon. I'm not sure I exactly think it's that cut and dry. I'll just say this. There are certain things that I did acquire while doing research on what's going on in the current Titans situation, and I can't share them, but I would tell you that I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. It makes me more affirmed in my idea that I just want to blow it up and start over. I'll just put it to you like that. Now, as far as Vrabel wanting someone else other than Amy Adams Strunk making final decisions, I mean, you got to go coach for another team if you want to do that. She owns the team. That's not going to change. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. There was some player support for Vrabel today and former player support. We'll get to that coming up next. And your phones. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. And again, we'll be following kind of the latest with all of this. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my freaking guys. That's right. I love Hiller. They've been taking great care of my home for 6 years, and they will do the exact same for you. I promise that. They've got their own guarantee, 100% guaranteed. Happy you'll be, or the service is free. And I'm just going to tell you, I'll give you my 100% guarantee on top of that. Hiller's great. They are professional, experienced, trustworthy. They got great technicians that come into your home and leave it clean or better than they found it. And Hiller offers true transparency pricing. What it means is that Hiller will line item every part of a job up front so that the homeowners can easily understand what they're paying for and why. For example, they're itemizing parts and labor separately. No hidden fees, no added costs, no surprises when you get your bill. It's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Learn more at happyhiller.com. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Fish Truck today. There you go. That was Taylor Lewan today on Kay Adams' show. I don't even know what channel that's on, but it's on something. And Taylor Lewan saying all these teams will want Vrabel. It would be a disservice to the city of Nashville. That's great, Taylor, but I don't know what Taylor Lewan knows about hiring and firing coaches. I mean, I'm sorry. I just don't know. Will Levis was asked about Vrabel today, and he voted in favor of Vrabel staying. And I'm sure there will be some people that say, see, that's a good sign. This is our young quarterback. Yeah, they don't pay Will Levis to make those decisions. And Will Levis knows that. And if they bring in a new coach, I'm sure Will Levis will like that new coach fine. But there is going to be, I will say yesterday's game, the one thing to take away from that is that Vrabel's absolutely not lost this team. I think that those comments with Gentry Estes, I think they rallied around that, and they rallied around Derrick Henry's last game, and I think Derrick Henry, knowing it was probably his last game, probably gave them an effort that kind of rallied everybody else around it. So I don't think he's lost the team, but I also don't think that matters. Again, I see this from everybody's shoes, so I understand why they feel the way that they feel. And I've told you, if I owned this football team, I would have never set up this collaboration with, oh, no one's going to have the final say, and we end up taking a guard with the 11th overall pick. So, it is what it is. And I do think this. I think Vrabel's trying to get fired. Not from the sense of that he's walking in there and saying, he knows they're not going to sit there and say, okay, Mike, whatever you want, we'll give you. But I do think Vrabel knows that there's probably places for him to go, and he's okay with that. And so he can go to them and say, I want this or. And then that puts the ball in their court. Adam in Portland is up next here on our program, here on a Titans Monday. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Adam?
Hey, man. So I'll start by saying that I thought that was the most boring football season I've ever had as a Titans fan.
Certainly wouldn't call it boring.
It was
bad,
boring.
Yes. Boring. And it's not the worst season the Titans have ever had. Boring. No, Mike Munchak's teams were boring. This season, you had the punter getting decapitated in the middle of the season in a game in which they lost in overtime because they missed an extra point. You had Will Levis out there playing against the third stringers of the Texans, and you lose that game in over. Those games were not boring games. It was a bad season. It wasn't a boring season. Come on now.
I found this team extremely not entertaining to me. And I'll say that, I put a lot of that on the players that are brought in. So I can't put that on Vrabel. But I will say, you take away the one horse Vrabel has had the entire way. Number one, we probably aren't above 500 at all without Derrick Henry if we don't have him. So I can't imagine bringing Mike Vrabel back without Derrick Henry. And I don't want either of them back, honestly, dude. I love Derrick Henry. He's a great player. He is the best thing that we've seen since the early Titans. But at the same time, man, we gotta turn the page, man. We need a fresh start. And it doesn't have Mike Vrabel, who was, a former player who's all about himself and his big ego. We don't need that being a head coach of the Titans. I, for one, was a Jeff Fisher guy, so I don't think if you're a Jeff Fisher guy, you're probably going to be a Mike Vrabel guy too, because they're two completely different guys. But I will say that I don't want Vrabel here anymore, and I don't care if they just fire him, man. I don't necessarily have to have something for him for me to be happy with you firing him.
Okay. And I think ownership – thank you, Adam. Again, I heard from somebody today who said that they thought she was firing him yesterday. That they thought he was going to be fired yesterday. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't know if that was bad info. I don't know if that win that they had changed that. I have no idea. But that's what they told me they thought. In fact, David, if you could, Joe was on the midday show earlier today, and he actually said something, because I was going to wonder, if Joe's going to get on there and say, Jared's reporting and whatever, because those scribes get really, really mad when I have info, because they're supposed to have the info, so sometimes the scribes get a little mad. Joe, usually not so much, but just sometimes they get mad. And so I was kind of wondering what Joe was going to say, but Joe actually said he was hearing some things about Vrabel and his job, and Caroline pressed him on it. Here's how far he was willing to go. So he won't tell us. But I'm guessing he probably heard what I heard too, if I had to guess. So I just tell you, I one way or another, I do not expect Mike Vrabel to be the coach of this team next year. And I don't know what's going to happen with Rand Carthon. And it's tough because I want to get on here and tell you, what I think will happen. But if I start talking, at length about what I think will happen, there's no way for me to know what Amy's going to do. It would essentially just be either me trying to evaluate what she would do based upon what she's done in the past, and she is very much a wild card here. The only thing I knew this entire time around Thanksgiving when Diana Rossini put out the report that the Titans would not fire Vrabel and the Titans would not trade Vrabel, and the one thing I told you was Titans lie all the time about that kind of stuff. They lied about Malarkey. They lied about Munchak. So I'm not going to sit back and say that, this must be it. That's the one thing. So I could give you an analysis of what I think, based off her history, she's going to do. But I really have no idea. Or I could tell you what I would do, which is great, but you guys want to know what they're going to do, and I don't have the answer for that. But Adam right there brought up a very important point, which he said, I don't care if they fire him and I don't get anything in return. And that would be on the table. That is very much on the table now. And if I was in charge, it absolutely would be on the table. But draft picks are also pretty valuable, especially good ones. And coaching trades in the past, while they're different now in terms of what you're allowed to do or not allowed to do or whatever it may be, coaching trades are more complicated, but coaching trades have been incredibly lucrative over the years. Tampa Bay gave up the world for John Gruden, and the Raiders were going to fire him a year later anyways. And the owner that you're most likely to be negotiating a Vrabel trade with is an owner who has traded a first-round pick for a coach. And he says that's the best trade he ever made, was trading for Bill Belichick. So I think there's going to be some Titan fans that are like, we're not trading our coach if we don't get something in return. But then what are you going to do? Bring Vrabel back in when he's like, yeah, I don't trust this setup we've got here. I don't trust this for this season. So somebody tell me what to do. Well, then what do you do? And I don't think a majority of you are okay with just firing Vrabel. Let's go to Dave, who's up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's up, Dave?
Hey, can you hear me, Jared?
Go.
Hey, buddy. All right, total transparency here. I am a Steeler fan living here in Nashville, and it's just hard to listen to, all the Titan turmoil and stuff like that.
Dave, get to the point.
I just wanted to say the reason that the Titans won the game yesterday, you know what it really was?
Oh, this is going to be stupid. What?
Like, come on, Jared. You got to know, man.
Dave, I'm going to drop you in about 3 seconds if you don't give me something here. Today's a serious day.
It's because Trevor Lawrence disrespected the terrible towel earlier this year.
Okay, thank you, Dave. As my prediction came to pass, I said this is going to be stupid, and it was, in fact, incredibly stupid that somebody waited as long as they waited to drop that in there. By the way, how about all those national media people? And I'm not sitting here gloating because, I thought the Titans were going to win that division this year. But how about all the national media people that Jacksonville's going to be so good. Lawrence is going to be, they're the team this year. They didn't even make the playoffs. Didn't even make the playoffs. Come on now. That's embarrassing. With how much everybody just waxed poetically about Jacksonville. That said, that is going to be Houston next year, I'm afraid. More of your phone. 615-737-1025 on our program. 615-737-1025 here if you want to weigh in on the program. And again, today is a serious day on the radio. So if you got something to say, make it important. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
We are also watching the status of Mike Vrabel, the Tennessee Titans head coach. He's going to meet with ownership at some point, probably today. And we'll see what this means about his future. There's going to be some hard questions. There's going to be some hard discussions. We do not know how it is going to end. I think it's fair to say it is uncertain whether or not Vrabel will be the head coach going forward.
That was Ian Rappaport this morning. And again, the meetings are ongoing. And this is the way you know that this is all true about, because Diana Rossini yesterday reported there's always meetings, but I don't think there's any special meeting that's Will Levis told the media today that Vrabel told them, hey, I'll let you know as soon as something's up. Vrabel's telling the players, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen. I'll let you know on the other side. And that is never a sign of sure stability. Sean texts into the text line and says, so much of this seems like a clashing of philosophies between Vrabel and Rand. Analytics versus old school football. Such a messy situation created by Amy, and this is what happens in these type of forced situations. I don't think it's the way and I'm trying to do this delicately, right? Because I've talked to a lot of different people. I don't think Vrabel's issue is with analytics or the scouting staff, or even, as I reported, he wants more defined roles for Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson. I don't think it's like an issue of Rand's philosophy as much as I think it may be an issue with the way that the organization is run in terms of how it is delegated. David, does that make any sense?
A little bit.
So basically, I think, again, like let's say trying to figure out a way to kind of do this without, throwing anybody under the bus. I don't know how to do that. I just trust me on this one. Just trust me that it's not about like the philosophy of how they find players. It's more about the actual doing of the work and how it gets done. That's the issue at hand here. Like who's involved on what, whose responsibility is what, that is kind of the bigger issue than it is about, well, this guy relies on analytics and this guy relies on his gut, and it's more complicated than that. And at the same time, a little bit more simple than that too. Let's go to Jeremiah, who's been waiting patiently. We got loaded phones. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Yes, sir. Two points of interest for me. Derrick Henry deserves to be with a team that can genuinely appreciate his talent. And number two, this Mike Vrabel, let's pull that tooth and get it over with already, man. It's like the O.J. Simpson trial. Let's get this bloody mess over with already.
If you do that, you're not going to get any picks in return for him.
Well, I mean, it's got to work itself out somehow. You got a bad tooth, pull it. Let's get it over with so this team can finally do something that they can be appreciated for.
Right. The problem is that when you pull that bad tooth, you then throw that bad tooth away. Thank you for your call. When you pull that bad tooth, you then throw that tooth away. That tooth has no value to us adults. Now, the Tooth Fairy, who is very real, Vrabel, the Tooth Fairy, there is value in kids' teeth, but there is no value in your analogy of pulling the tooth. There is value in Vrabel. I mean, I was told, everybody's, of course, circling New England, and I was told today by a league source, do not count out Washington when it comes to Vrabel. There will be places for Vrabel to go. So there is value attached to him. So it's almost like, well, why give up that value for free when that value could be very important towards rebuilding your football team? Jason says, I'm just curious, is it possible to hold on to Vrabel's rights and hire a new coach similar to what the Saints and Sean Payton did and then trade him later to New England for a couple of picks? Yes, that is possible. It is possible for Vrabel to quit. The problem there is there's no guarantee if Vrabel were to quit and you were to have the rights to his contract a la Sean Payton and the Saints, there is no guarantee that New England would make the deal for Sean Payton. I mean, for Vrabel. The thing about Sean Payton was that we knew he was going to take a year off, and so New Orleans could go and hire their own staff, and they didn't have to worry. This was totally a Payton decision. So they could hire their own staff, they could get on with their life, and they didn't have to worry about Payton being upset or Payton wanting to come back and be the coach, and they knew that there was going to be some sort of a market for Sean Payton somewhere else. But there's no way, unless Vrabel quits, for you to be able to do that. And so it's possible, but the team does not have the control to be able to force Vrabel into that situation. Bob says, if you're right about what Vrabel wants, is Vrabel basically saying he wants Amy to hire someone to do what Amy is supposed to be doing? I would put it to you like this. Imagine if Floyd was still alive, right? And they had this great collaboration that they had formed up. And again, Vrabel had nothing to do with that. Now, he wanted more of a say, like he wanted to be listened to. Apparently, there was one player in particular that I think really got under Vrabel's skin over the years, that he wanted to have, at least the ability to say, no, we're not doing that player. But not have final say, not run the personnel department, not run the scouting staff, not run the workouts on Tuesdays when you're going to work out 3 offensive linemen, so you need to bring in 3 defensive linemen and a quarterback to work them out too, because you need to. He don't want to do that. He wants to coach. But it would be like Vrabel going to Amy and saying, hey, Rand's doing his thing with the personnel side. I'm doing my thing with the coaching side of it. But can we bring Floyd Reese in here just to, say, hey, we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. That, I think, is what Vrabel's looking for. And I can't begrudge that. I mean, I get it. I've told you guys, I think this model is so stupid that if it were up to me, if I owned the football team, we would be cleaning house. And I know people are going to be mad for about an hour that we fired a general manager 1 year into it. But ultimately, just like the Texans, who took so much crap from everybody last year when they one and done Lovie Smith, a year after one and dunning David Culley, everybody said the Texans were a joke. The owner didn't know what he was doing. They had the team chaplain involved in the decisions and this and that, this. Get rid of the chaplain, bring in D'Amico Ryans. Boom! Nobody thinks they're an incompetent franchise anymore. And that's the same here. You get it right, nobody bothers you anymore. Texture says, I would love for Vrabel to go to Washington so his smug self could keep losing. Let's go back to your phones here on the program. Let's go to Dylan, who is up next here on the program. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Dylan?
So this is not as much as a Titans call, more of a Jazz call. What is going on in Jacksonville? Trevor Lawrence threw a wide open pass to Sean Murphy-Bunting. He didn't even have to, try to get it, just right at him. Trevor Lawrence, I don't think he's very good. And I turned around with some fans, I was like, he's not good, is he? And I was just kind of shaking their heads. And I don't know what's going on in Jacksonville. Their fans, it was a weird vibe after the loss. Like, they just kind of.
So I'll tell you what I found to be really, really hard for me to understand. Thank you, Dylan. What was very hard for me about yesterday's game, which was I sit on the sideline, behind in the club level, behind the opposing sideline. And so I can look down and see the Jags bench. And I was wondering, early in that game when things started, were we going to see some emotion and some. No. It's like it was an October game down on that sideline. I could not believe it. And yeah, Jacksonville, man, they got problems. But that's for Jacksonville Radio. We'll get back to your phone. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And I will say this. At the end of the day, this is all a giant mess that was completely avoidable. But there's a reason that it's not, and we shouldn't forget it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Again, the phone number is 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in again. That is 615-737-1025. Tune into 94.9 The Fan Thursday night for Vandy women's basketball. They have been kicking butt The Commodores will be on the road taking on Kentucky pregame 5:45. Tip-off is at 6. Coverage available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. And be sure to tune in to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow for Vandy men's basketball as they take on LSU on the road. Pregame is at 7:30. Tip-off is at 8. Coverage is available on the 94.9 The Fan app. Stone and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios on a Black Monday. This in from Diana Rossini of The Athletic, who, by the way, brought us the no way, no how they're going to trade Vrabel. Now, I'm like, Diana, you haven't talked to Titans ownership much over the years, have you? They can tell you one thing on Thursday, and on Friday it's totally different. Diana Rossini reported, quote, the coaching staff and players in Tennessee have not been given an update about the status of head coach Mike Vrabel. I was told they are all waiting to hear, which does go in line with the reporting I had earlier today, which is Vrabel was going to meet with ownership, and Vrabel was going to demand that ownership put in a football executive that is not Burke Nihill, who is the team president and CEO, a football executive above he and Rand Carthon. He wants more defined roles for assistant GM Anthony Robinson and Chad Brinker. And Vrabel does not want to be the general manager, and he does not want final say. Also, do not rule out, the league source said, do not rule out Vrabel being fired today. And again, I heard from somebody else who was not my league source. I heard from somebody else today who said that they thought Vrabel was getting fired last night. So we are very much, I tweeted this out maybe yesterday or Saturday, but we are under what I call a coach watch, which means that the conditions are right. Just like a tornado watch, the conditions are right for a coaching change. Now, the reason that we're here, if you had to ask me between this, what Vrabel wants, is it unrealistic? I would tell you the answer is no. Now, is Mike Vrabel, who I don't think had a very good year coaching this year, is Mike Vrabel the one to be demanding it? That's a different discussion. But I've always thought that this collaboration, if things went sideways at all, was going to be a problem. I will say this about if I were the Titans and Mike Vrabel were coming to me demanding that there would be changes. I would listen. I would listen, and I would take a second. Now, I think, as I've said, I do not think Mike Vrabel is going to be the head coach of this football team in 2024. I also think there's a chance, just based off of what I've heard today, that by the time that we sign off at 6, and if something goes down, they might let us stay on until 6:30, but we have the national championship game tonight right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game, that by the time I sign off today, I think there's a chance Vrabel might be fired. I'm just going to tell you that right now. And I don't think Vrabel knows if Vrabel's getting fired today or not. Or if Vrabel's going to be in purgatory or whatever. But if I was running the franchise, and it'd be very different. I've already told you, I'd blow it up, start over. But if Vrabel had a list of, outlines and explanations and what he didn't like about last year and he wanted to talk about it, I would listen. Even though you guys know that Vrabel does so many things that drive me crazy. But I would listen. And what I would do after the fact is I would take a deep breath today and I'd really think it out. Because one of the problems I think the Titans have had over the years is they make a lot of decisions without really thinking it out. The Rand Carthon hire and the way they presented it being another one. They really think it out before they fire John Robinson. Really think it out. Do you think this is really in the best interest of your team? And then operate. And I don't think they've been doing a very good job of that. And I go back right now. A lot of people in the text line are blaming Amy. And look, I like Amy a lot. One texter says, this whole thing sounds like Amy's fault, and now the organization is put in a tough spot because of her wrongdoings. So when they fired John Robinson, and I know I've told this story a couple of times, but when they fired John Robinson, I hoped that it was because of something else outside of football, right? An HR issue, an affair, stealing from work, something like that. And after about 3 days, I found out, the more digging I did, the more talking, that nope, they just fired him because they didn't like their job performance. And I thought, oh no, this is what the stupid teams do. And I don't want my team to be run like a stupid team. And so everything else along the way has just kind of been trying to fit this idea that they had in their head when they fire John Robinson of what they want to build or what they want to become. And I think there's some checking boxes that they're doing along the way. Oh, we want to make sure that we include this in there. And I think it's put them in an untenable spot. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. David has been waiting very patiently and is up next here on the program. David, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Here's my question comment for you. I think we've already seen some telltale signs that Vrabel has lost some of his authority, responsibility over the last 3 or 4 games. If you think about the type of coach he is, where he likes to be in control of all aspects of coaching, when I see strictly his body language on the sidelines, it tells me that I think he's lost some control. And I don't think that he's aggravated or upset with the performance of the team. I think what we're seeing is that they've taken some of that away from him with the threat for firing, which I think is the next step. And that's my comment question for you. See what you think.
Yeah, David, I don't want to say you're wrong because I don't know for sure, but I think you're wrong. I think, I think Vrabel has more power. Thank you, David. I think Vrabel has more power now than he did before. So I don't think they've taken power away from Vrabel. I think Vrabel looks the way he looks on the sidelines, where he's bent over at the waist and he looks like he's about to throw up into the toilet. I think he looks that way because the team sucks and because it's incredibly frustrating for him to feel like he's in that spot, which is how he looked in 2019 when Mariota went out to Denver and laid an egg. What I was told today by the same league source that was kind of telling me what Vrabel's going in there and demanding, what I was told today was that Rand Carthon kind of just runs the scouting staff right now, and Vrabel runs everything else. Now, as far as who picks the players, that wasn't part of the running, but I'm talking about like the day-to-day operations of the football team. Rand just kind of oversees the scouting staff. This is what I was told. Rand oversees the scouting staff. Vrabel's the one who has to basically do everything else. And quite frankly, I think Vrabel's kind of sick of it. And that's why he wants more defined roles for Chad Robinson and Anthony Brinker. And that's why I think he wants somebody to oversee it, to hold Rand's side of the, and this is all my conjecture here on this part of it, but to have like a Zara football to oversee Rand Carthon to make sure that they're doing what they think, should be done. Paul is in Nashville and is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, Jared. Cool of you to kind of break this when everyone else in the media was acting like you were crazy.
Well, I didn't break anything, but thank you.
I know owners have the money and they do what they want to do, and that is logical. That makes sense to me. But do you think an impending stadium and PSL sales and in general unhappy fan base is going to have any bearing on the decisions made here?
I think it has a bearing on why Mike Vrabel feels the way he feels.
Okay.
I can't tell you about, I'm sure ownership is thinking, thank you, by the way, Paul, on your call. I can't tell you what ownership's thinking. I can't tell you what Vrabel's thinking. But I do think Mike Vrabel's smart enough to realize that if he doesn't think the way the Titans are operating the business, if he doesn't think that that could lead them to be successful, then he probably thinks they're not going to be very good next year, and he knows who's going to get blamed, especially when the fans get mad, because at some point the Titans are going to have to roll out how much PSLs and season tickets are going to cost in the new stadium. At some point they're going to have to roll that out. And I think we all know those numbers are going to be high. And the last thing somebody wants when the team's not very good is the idea of, hey, your season tickets, which used to cost you $5,000, now cost you $15,000, and the PSL, which, you bought for $1,000 in 1998, is now going to be worth $30,000, and we'll go ahead and subtract the $1,000 you paid, so now you owe us $29,000 plus $15,000. You owe us, what is that, $44,000? And there's going to be people that aren't happy if the team's not very good. And Vrabel is smart enough to know this, and he's smart enough to know that if that's the case, who are they going to be mad at? They're going to be mad at him. I think Vrabel knows this is, and again, this is speculation here. I think Vrabel thinks what I think of Rand Carthon, which I don't think very much of Rand as a GM. And I'm not even talking about the players part of it, which I have been underwhelmed by. But I am talking about the general part of general manager that I have not been impressed at all by Rand Carthon with. But I don't think that they can win with this collaboration, and I don't think they can win with the way that Rand is doing his side of the business right now, and I don't even think they can win with Vrabel doing things his way, which I think there need to be some changes with Vrabel. But I'm trying to put myself in Vrabel's shoes, and I think he feels like if I can't win with Rand on top of this, I'm going to get blamed for next year. I'm going to get fired, and all these people that think I'm a great coach may not think that when my team keeps losing games. So it's almost like get out while your value is still high, while other teams would still want you, if you know you can't succeed there anymore. So it's almost like he's going to ownership saying, this is my last ditch for me to explain to you how I think we can succeed. And as I said, if I were them, I would listen. That doesn't mean he's right. That doesn't mean they're not going to fire him. But they should listen to what he has to say. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We continue along. 615-737-1025, and we'll see if there are any other updates so far. I did talk to somebody in the league. About what he thought over the weekend about the Titans and Vrabel. I'll tell you what he said. We'll do that coming up next. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Preds fans, do not miss Wednesday night's Smashville Live at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue at 6 o'clock. See your Preds star players up close and personal. This week's special guests are Yuso Parsonen and Philip Tomasino. Smashville Live is brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company, and tomorrow, tune in for Preds Pick to Click. And you can play if you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night. You will win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexro tomorrow at 8:45. Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ, my agent, to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
Mike was always ready, willing, and Vrabel. There was no one who values versatility as much as Coach Belichick, but there's no way Bill could have predicted how valuable Vrabel would be when we signed him as a free agent in '01. Mike was not the most heralded free agent signing, but he quickly became one of the most important ones. Over the next 8 seasons, Mike was a key cog in a defensive unit that helped us secure 6 division titles, 4 AFC championships, and 3 Super Bowl victories. Mike will join the 33 other members inside the Patriots Hall of Fame, where his legacy will be preserved as one of the greatest in franchise history. Mike, you might be a titan in the industry now, but to us, you'll always be a Patriot.
Robert Kraft, Patriots owner. We know he loves Vrabel. And let's not kid ourselves. I know he and Bill are going to meet, and now it's coming out that Bill would be fine giving up the GM duties, and it's over for Belichick in New England. It's over. I don't know how they're going to do it, but it's over. But I do want to clear something up. I do think that there are a lot of people that just think the Titans can trade Mike Vrabel. And I said this earlier today, that it is a lot more complicated with the new rules being what they are. I don't know if you guys have noticed in Washington where they hired a basketball general manager to run their football coaching search, but they are already requesting permission to interview this guy, that guy, this guy, that guy. Like, they are off and running. The Chargers have been off and running. I mean, I think word on the street is they're interested in Jim Harbaugh. Like, that didn't happen today. Okay. That's probably been brewing over time. And so these other teams are getting a head start. So when it comes to Vrabel, there are 2 options. There is a trade and there is an outright firing. And I'm going to use Bobby Slowick's name here as an example because I like Bobby Slowick. If I had my choice as to who the next coach of the Tennessee Titans could be, I would vote for Bobby Slowick. That is my number 1 choice. I've never met Bobby Slowick, so he could be a total booger-picking and eating goon. I have no idea. That's why we have interviews to go over those things, right? But that's the guy I like the most, is Bobby Slowick. Well, if you want Bobby Slowick, you probably have to fire Mike Vrabel today. Because if you don't, and you wait, first the Patriots have to trade Bill, then the Patriots have to interview 2 external minority candidates, then you can trade Vrabel, then you have to wait the 2 weeks, and then interview 2 external minority candidates, and then you can hire Bobby Slowick, but by then, Bobby Slowick's probably already had a Zoom meeting with every single other team that's looking for a coach. So now, if you're proposing the idea of, well, let's get rid of Vrabel because we know we can get Bobby Slowick, do you know that? Because if you can't get Bobby Slowick and all that's out there as far as coaches is Dan Quinn or some coordinator or Ron Rivera or Arthur Smith, you know, you're kind of stuck there, right? How will you feel if just because you wanted to see if you could trade with the Patriots so desperately that you waited it out and you were stuck with Arthur Smith as the only guy that you could hire because all the other guys that you would want are all snatched up? And that is why, again, for everybody out there that's like, I only want to trade them, I'm like, well, there are some consequences that come with that. Now, there is one other word that I have not introduced into this, which does maybe bend this a little bit. And that word is tampering. And I'll just say this. I am not against tampering. I am against you getting caught while tampering. But I am not against tampering. So, Rand Carthon worked in San Francisco. I don't know how close he is with Bobby Slowick, but maybe he and Bobby Slowick are cool. And maybe somebody said, what would you think about the Titans job over there, Bobby? Would you be interested? And let's say Bobby Slowick said yes. I'd want the Titans job, which we have no idea if Bobby Slowick thinks that or not. Well, then maybe it makes it easier to say, hey, you guys just good luck this week at Cleveland. Just take your time. But we're going to try to work something out here with Vrabel and New England. Now, you're completely throwing the Rooney Rule out. Now you're not even considering any minority candidates, which is against the spirit of the rule, though it does happen. And you're tampering and could get caught and in some serious trouble. And you guys love draft picks, and that's what you would get charged if they found you tampering for Bobby Slowick. So you could do that, but it's very risky. So I guess this is a long-winded way of me saying it's probably much harder to trade Mike Vrabel than everybody thinks. I've said that at the top of the show, but I reiterate that, and that a firing is infinitely more likely to me than a trade. The second part of this is I talked to a league source, not the same league source that told me about the meetings and everything else, but I talked to a league source over the weekend. And I asked the league source, I said, what do you think? What's the word on the street about the Titans and Vrabel? And the league source said, he'll be back for one more season. And I said, that sounds kind of pointless. And he said, unsure if Rand has a name that he can land. And also currently, Tennessee is not an attractive job based on some of the other current and projected openings, not due to ownership, but due to overall talent. Where a prospective coach is looking at the league and saying, Justin Herbert, Joey Bosa, Rashawn Slater, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler over here, and Will Levis over there. You don't even have Derrick Henry anymore. And I think that's a concern too. Now, I'm not one of these guys that says, if you fire the guy, who are you going to hire? Who are you going to hire? Who are you going to hire? Because I hear that all the time from people. That was the biggest defense of Kevin Stallings when he was at Vanderbilt. Was like, hey, Kevin Stallings gets them to the NCAA tournament once every 5 years. Who are you going to hire that's any better? And granted, Vanderbilt has not made. I think Bryce Drew's probably a pretty good coach, and they probably screwed him. But then Jerry Stackhouse, I don't think is a very good coach. But I think there are plenty of coaches that could win at Vanderbilt, and they'll be fine. And that's how I feel about this here, too. But at the same time, if I am in charge of making those decisions, I want to know what I'm going to do next. And so that's what makes it increasingly difficult is if Rand gave you a list of, hey, here's 5 guys I think could be a coach, you don't even know them. You may not even like them. You're the owner. You're the one that has to hire them. You may not like those 5 guys on that list. And you don't even know if you can get them. And you have to wait 2 weeks. So this is much more complicated. Everybody in this negotiation that it looks like, or these discussions that are being had. I've been watching The Sopranos a lot lately. In the mob, they'd call it a sit-down. The sit-downs that they've been having. Everybody has something to gain and everybody has something to lose. When it comes to the Titans, if they fire Vrabel, they fire the value with which Vrabel represents. And he's free to join any club, and you get no picks in return. If you're Vrabel and you get fired, who knows if New England is going to go with Gerard Mayo or not? Who knows if Washington is going to hire you or if one of the 9 guys they've got on their committee is going to turn around and offer the job to, say, Ben Johnson of the Lions. Who knows? Doug Marrone once quit a job because he thought he had another one lined up, and then he didn't get it. Then he had to go be an offensive line coach. So be careful, Mike. You try to put your hands down on the table to say, hey, I'm going all in for this. And the Titans could shelve Vrabel, saying, we're going to try to trade you. And then he'd have to quit. And then he wouldn't get paid any of the money. Guys like getting paid. Same with Rand. If they bring in a football czar ahead of Rand, which would essentially be a demotion, Rand can cry about it, but if Rand gets so mad that he quits, that's a lot of money that he'd be giving back. So everybody's got something to gain and everybody's got something to lose here, and it's just a very tricky situation that the Titans find themselves in. And again, as I've said, to me, this is their own doing. This all stems from the Robinson firing, which I'm not saying Robinson shouldn't have been fired because, I mean, who knows what would have happened the rest of the season and then in the offseason, but I wouldn't have fired John Robinson at that point. I certainly think it was ridiculous to fire him in the middle of the season. And then the Titans decided that they wanted something in particular. They went looking for it. They must have found it. And then who knows what they have in Rand Carthon in this collaboration, but it's obvious, reportedly, being reported by me, that it's not working with the collaborators. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I hope I'm not just rambling here, but we'll go to your phones next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
I don't want these, interactions between us to always feel like we got to take a negative turn. And, this should be a joyous moment for us to praise these kids. This is a moment, these kids are going to see this, and this is a moment for them and their families to rejoice in, because it's only going to happen once. There'll be other times to critique what they've done. These kids haven't even stepped on the NFL field yet. So let's keep that in mind. This is a moment for them and their families to have something to be proud of and enjoy this moment.
If the NFL draft is the best night of their NFL career, they're not going to have a very good career.
That was the NFL draft the Friday night, and that right there probably should have been a sign that I don't know about this shotgun marriage between the coach and the general manager. One texter says, and I don't know if I've said our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, but they absolutely 100% are. Anywho, one texter texts into the text line, this is Caleb in Gallatin, and says the fact that Vrabel is proposing, and let me just say, reportedly, proposing to Amy that they need someone else above them makes me think that he's not sure Rand is a good general manager, period. So before I read the rest of this text, I'm just going to tell you, in all the talking that I have done, and I've done a lot of talking, I have heard very little support of Rand Carthon. I'm just going to tell you that straight up from what they've seen in the first year. Now, I have my own feelings as far as Rand is concerned, and you know it. And I go back to the Byard thing, in which, again, a lot of people interpret this as me being upset or my ego being hurt that Rand didn't call me back. But that's not what bothers me. It's not an ego thing. I don't care what the general manager thinks of my show or not or whatever. But it is the understanding that he's the general manager and that if I go on the air and say, hey, here's what I'm hearing, that everybody's going to hear it and it's going to create problems for him. And him not knowing that was a sign of incompetence. So that hit me. But then as I dug some digging and some other things, I have not heard a lot of positive things about Rand Carthon's ability to run the operation. I'm going to tell you one thing that one person told me that has upset some people in the organization. And nobody in the organization would say this because it sounds so petty, but I understand this. I don't know if you guys have seen these press conferences Rand Carthon does whenever he does do a press conference, like during the draft or before the start of the season or when he's at practice on the sideline. But he wears this hat that has like this knockoff T logo on it. Will Levis has been wearing this hat in a lot of these press conferences. And so it's not a Titans hat, but it's like one of his buddies has a hat company and he makes these hats and they're selling these hats. And so Rand Carthon wears this knockoff T logo hat. And there are people in the organization that do not like that because everybody in the organization is supposed to wear Titans stuff. And there are people in the organization who are trying to sell Titans stuff. And so they want the Titans general manager to be wearing a Titans hat. And when Rand's wearing his own hat and he's, this is my buddy's hat company. And again, it's not something big. But it is, are you doing this for you and your buddy, or are you representing the team? That has upset some people. There have been some other things that I've heard about. As far as the process of evaluating players or working players out during the week with Rand that has come into question a little bit. So I haven't heard anything about Rand talking to the organization, and I'm sure with this much smoke, Rand's going to have to talk to the organization and give his opinion one way or another. But just, again, league sources and things like that, I haven't heard a lot of positive stuff as far as Rand's concerned. Continuing, I feel bad because I stopped reading that text midway through. Texter says, I'm curious what Rand's thoughts on what the Titans should do are. With Vrabel's plan, he is basically giving Rand or offering to give Rand a demotion, and I would imagine he is against that. If I had to choose, I would probably replace Rand, seeing as he hasn't had much experience as a general manager, and we know that if the Titans have good players, that Vrabel can be a good coach. Vrabel just needs to stick to coaching and let someone with more experience be the general manager. That comes from Caleb. Yeah, I don't think Rand would like that either. But again, I don't know what's in Rand's contract. A lot of these guys that get the general manager position have it put in their contract that they run the roster. So if you want to take that responsibility away from me, you have to fire me and you have to pay me all my money. With Ran, I don't know what's in his contract. It could be feasible given the nature of the collaboration and lack of authority that the owner has given anybody around there. I think it would be safe to assume that that's not in his contract. And so in theory, they could bring in a president of football operations and have the general manager who doesn't have final say in his contract report to the president of football operations. And so, but again, if you're Ran, you would hate that, right? But what are you going to do about it? Are you going to quit? Because then you lose all that money. And I don't think, look, man, I got pride too. I've got an ego. I think I'm a great radio host. If they came to me and they said, Jared, we're going to make you the third guy on a show with two other people, and you're just going to kind of like be there, but it's going to really be, Spunky and Scotty, and you're the third guy, I wouldn't like that very much. But if I didn't have any other options, I may have to suck it up and deal with it. But that's a different discussion for a different day. Now people are arguing in the text line about the hat company. It's not about the hat company. It's about the fact that it's not a Titans hat. That seems to be, again, bothering. And that's just an example. Cameron says, the whole Adams family is and has been terrible owners from the existence of the franchise. They're not the worst in the league, and they've been around since the 60s, and they've never done anything. I think you guys just think that right now because the team's losing. I'm just going to tell you that. I remember 8 years ago when this was the worst team in the league with the number one draft choice, and people hated ownership. And then Amy started to be out there a little bit more. She hired John Robinson, who I know most of you hate now, but you guys loved John Robinson at first, and so did I. Then they had Mike Mularkey, and he won. You guys liked him okay, but you liked Amy, and you trusted her, and then she fired Mularkey. You loved her. And you kept winning, and you loved her. And now all of a sudden they've been losing. You liked her when she fired John Robinson out of thin air. And now you're mad. And I think a lot of that people being mad probably stems just straight up from the losing. I mean, I was mad about all this when they fired Robinson because when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, that is incompetence. I mean, even looking back at the Mularkey thing, which I was really hard on them about. Specifically Robinson, but really hard on the Titans for. Because I thought that was crazy. But we look at that now and it's like, man, they fired a winning coach. They just fired him. They were in the divisional round of the playoffs and they fired him. Amazing. But I do think the idea to collaborate, I think that stems off of an overreaction to how John Robinson wanted everybody in line. That it was his way or the highway, and there's something about egos that people don't want to be told they're wrong. Everybody says, oh yeah, I have thick skin. I can listen to it, but that doesn't always make it true. And I think Robinson didn't want people to challenge his authority or challenge his ideas because maybe he felt like it was a challenge to his authority when really it was just a challenge to that idea more than anything else. And I think Amy saw that and said, I don't want that. I want somebody who's willing to work with others, and made that a hallmark of her next step. The problem was that NFL organizations need to be run by one football person. That's the real issue. 615-737-1025. More of your phone. 615-737-1025 here on our program twice daily. You know I love Twice Daily. I do, and you know Twice Daily wants to send you to Italy. That's right. In fact, I was at Twice Daily yesterday, and they had signs all over the Twice Daily about this trip to Italy. And the more I talk about it, the more I see the pictures for it, the more I really, really, really wish I could win. But I'm going to help you out for how you can win. Download the Twice Daily app today and buy any made-to-order Italian sub and use your rewards app to get entered to win. And every sub is a chance to win the trip to Italy, but mobile-ordered Italian subs count as 2 times the entries. Visit twicedaily.com for sweepstakes for more information. Twice Daily's made-to-order offerings allow you to get exactly what you want when you want it, so you can customize sandwiches and snacks the way you'd like to have it. Download the Twice Daily app today and join their loyalty program to unlock special discount savings and so much more. It pays to be a member with Twice Daily. You'll earn those points and save money with every visit. Get what you crave at Twice Daily. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day.
So you want to be here next year? Of course I want to be here. Be here as long as we can win and long as we can, do this thing. And it's been great, but it also has been, just frustrating this year. And nobody wants to be where we're at. You feel, for the players, having been in that situation, those guys are out there selling out. And, you feel for them when you look out there on the field and we're not winning, or it's pretty obvious. But, the one thing that, allows me to at least sleep at night is, when the games, we had a clunker in Jacksonville and in Houston, and we're out there, fighting, not letting them run through us, for 40, 50 yards and all that. And I know that there's no moral victories, and that's not a moral victory, but it's just a lot of times in those situations, you can just pack it up and pack it in. And, so that's, that was last week. And now this week we have to be in a different situation. Talked about the ability to put ourselves in that competitive situation, where the game has some flow to it. And, you make a play, you get a turnover, right? You pin them down and you start playing complementary. So talk to the team again, about that and about eliminating, some of the mistakes, that are just, that come at critical times and that, make it tough to overcome.
There you go. That was Vrabel last week. First of all, do you want to be here? Of course I want to be here. As long as we can win, as long as we can do this thing. And then a bunch of rambling. And my guess is, just based on my own reporting, the meeting Vrabel's having with ownership right now is about what Vrabel thinks they need to do in order for this team to win. And again, the reporting is Vrabel is going to ownership and demanding that they hire somebody above him and Rand Carthon, who is kind of the number one. Think of Tom Coughlin running the Jags, where Dave Caldwell was still there, the general manager, but it was Tom Coughlin's show. That's what Vrabel's looking for. Vrabel does not want final say, nor does he want to be GM. But that's what he's going to Amy and asking for, and I don't know what's going to happen. Somebody texted into the text line and said, when will we know if Vrabel is staying or going? When the white smoke comes out of St. Thomas Sports Park, I guess, is when we'll know. I have no idea when we'll know if Vrabel is staying or going. I would guess that we will know something by the divisional round of the playoffs, because that's when everybody can kind of interview whomever in person. That being said, I think a lot of people would expect there to be a resolution before that. I think there's a pretty good chance, just based off of my conversations. I think that there is a pretty good chance. Well, maybe not pretty good. I'm trying to think of the right way to. I think there's a chance that Mike Vrabel's is not the coach of this team when 6 o'clock comes and this show ends. I think there is a chance of that. Dre has been waiting patiently and is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Dre?
What's going on with you, Jared? Man, what are you doing again on this? Come on, man. What are you talking about malarkey? First off, I just want to address the malarkey deal. Malarkey stumbled, bumped his head, wound up, looked up, was in the playoffs. Must I remind you of Slim Terry Robisky that he didn't want to get rid of? Come on now. No.
Yeah, but like everybody has assistant coaches that the fans hate more than the coach hates.
He didn't want to get rid of Robisky. Now, here's the thing with Rand, and I tried to explain this to you the last time I called in, that Mike Vrabel really wants a lot of do-boys around him, and I just sensed that.
What does that mean?
Well, what that means is he wants total control over every aspect of the team. I want an offensive coordinator that's going to see my vision. You're a good coordinator, but this is how we're going to do it. He wants a defensive coordinator that mirrors his ideals for the team instead of really just letting guys go out and do their job.
Do you think that that's uncommon in the NFL, though? An NFL coach wanting coordinators that see the game the way they want it to be seen?
Well, no, it's not uncommon, but Mike Vrabel, let's just be honest, Mike Vrabel is a mover of men. He's a motivator of men. Mike Vrabel is not just a X's and O's guru. He's not. He wasn't that in Houston. You've said that 1,000 times, so you know he's not really that good
Sure, I don't think Vrabel's a very good strategist. Correct.
But now let me say this here. This is my point about Rand and Mike's relationship. This is just me speculating. The signaling that I got was groceries. I believe they brought Rand Carthon in simply to go and gather the groceries for Mike. That's it. I mean,
I absolutely believe that that's normally what the general manager's job is, but I don't think you're right about that. And I will just say that this is what I've heard, and I understand your point. Thank you, Dre, for your time. I understand your point. He only wants bad players, and I don't think that's the issue. I think it is the way that Rand runs the operation with which Vrabel has a hard time with. Some people are very organized. Some people aren't. Some people are very disciplined. Some people are not. Some people are very detailed. Others are not. Nick Saban one time actually said at SEC Media Days, he was talking to Derek, and he said that most things in life happen where we hire Derek Mason and we put a microphone in front of his face and turn it on and say, go. And I'm not saying that's what we did, but that was what Nick Saban, that was the example he was using. And he goes, that's not how it should be done. At Alabama, we bring somebody into the program and then we lay out for them on the front end what the expectations are, what their jobs are, what the definitions are, what, each spot is. That is how they build their program at Alabama. And I'm not sure every program is the same. And I think when it comes to Vrabel's biggest issues with Ran, it may be the structure, the organization, the discipline, the rigidness, that kind of stuff. More so than just, Vrabel doesn't think Rand's getting him good enough players. And I'm not sure people are going to understand what I meant by that. But you're just going to have to trust me. Because I can't give examples. Josh in Nashville says, Jared, what do you think about trying to get Will McClay out of Dallas? He's really been the brains of talent evaluation over there. I'm a huge Will McClay fan. Again, the one thing that I always put an asterisk by when it comes to saying, I want this guy, is that I've never met these people. So I have no idea if these dudes are crazy or not. And I say that with the other asterisk of telling you that I know Arthur Smith, and I am shocked that Arthur Smith screwed up the quarterback position in Atlanta as bad as he did. I cannot believe he did that. I mean, I listened to those players talk about him in the locker room after the game yesterday, and it wasn't your typical, oh yeah, we love Coach. It was, I've never seen somebody that leads men the way Coach does, and I've never this, and I'm like, that is in line with what I think of Arthur. The mess at the quarterback position, the getting their asses kicked in all these big games down the stretch, that's not what I know of Arthur Smith. So you can ask me about all these names. I don't know any of these people personally, but even the guy that I did know I thought was going to be a success, and I'm shocked that it failed the way it did. 615-737-1025. We will recap all of the latest news and info that we have surrounding the Titans coaching situation on Black Monday. We will do that coming up next here on Stillman and Company. 615-737-1025. And of course, we'll continue to get into your phones. 615-737-1025. All day we will be going to you here on today's program. On Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And let me remind everybody that tune in tonight at 6:30 on 94.9 The Fan as Washington and Michigan face off in the college football playoff national championship game at 7 o'clock. The game will be, tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight for Michigan and Washington. And then at 7 o'clock on 102.5 and 106.3, the game will follow the Commodore Hour. So we'll be on 6 o'clock. Commodore Hour will come on. Then the game will come on after the Commodore Hour, and it'll also be on 94.9 The Fan. Presented by Twin Peaks and Parman Tractor and Equipment. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Studios. So, again, we are awaiting the white smoke to arise from St. Thomas Sports Park for them to let us know who the head football coach of the Titans is going to be, or who the head football coach of the Titans is not going to be. What is the organization structure going to be going forward? And I think everybody wants an answer right now. You want to know. But what if the people that are making those decisions have not decided? So how did we get here? I told you guys on Friday that Sunday was going to be an opportunity for us to see Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill play one last game with the Titans. Hopefully Derrick Henry will play more in the future, but I'm not counting on it. Neither is he, by the way. You could tell, again, his goodbye speech. Somebody said, I said yesterday, I go, is that like an official goodbye speech, or is that well, I don't know the next time I'll be able to see Grandma, so let me make sure I tell Grandma I love her. And I think it was probably more like that. But again, Sunday was going to be the game. And for 3 hours yesterday, it was exciting. It was fun. It was competitive. It was a great game by the Titans. It was great. But then once that's over, then it's the real drama. And I told you guys the same feeling that I had in 2017 when all the malarkey stuff was just going on and on and on. And I said, I think something's going to happen. And on the pregame show yesterday, when we did our game day predictions, I said, and what happens with the coach and the general manager and everything else? And I said yesterday that I did not think that Mike Vrabel would be back. Where we sit right now, I do not think Mike Vrabel will be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans in 2024. But how did this really all start to really get rolling beyond just Chad Forbes on Twitter, some guy said? Adam Schefter on Saturday at ESPN, and I have been told that Vrabel is not a Schefter fan. Schefter says, despite speculation that the Titans are not expected to undergo significant change this offseason, there are expected to be organizational meetings between Mike Vrabel and the team's decision makers to determine whether any notable changes will be made, league sources told ESPN. There are people around the league who think that either Vrabel would be open to being moved to another team or that the Titans would be open to moving him, or maybe both. Schefter wrote that the situation in Tennessee currently is not settled, and he doubled down on that on Countdown yesterday using the word unsettled. Then Tom Pelissero came out, and he reported yesterday that Tennessee hired Rand Carthon a year ago over in-house candidate Ryan Cowden, whom league sources believe to be Mike Vrabel's preferred candidate. And I said yesterday on the pregame show that I had heard from a league source that had told me that Vrabel was told Ryan Cowden was going to be the general manager of the Titans, or at least that Vrabel was under the impression that Ryan Cowden was going to be the general manager, and those two would work lockstep and align together to build the program out. And then it was like, surprise! And that Vrabel's bigger issues were with the trust and ownership, more so than it was a like or dislike of Rand Carthon. Again, that's what I had heard. Go forward. This morning, there's a lot of talk about what's going to happen. Ian Rappaport says, unsettled. Diana Rossini reported within the hour that the Titans players and coaches are still awaiting word as to what's going to happen with Vrabel. And then I reported earlier today around noon on our midday show that a league source had told me Mike Vrabel was going to ownership today to demand that there would be somebody placed in a position, a football position, with a football person over both he and Rand Carthon. Apparently, Vrabel does not want to be the general manager or have final say. Vrabel wants more defined roles for Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson, the team's assistant general managers. And that I am not supposed to, according to this league source, rule out the idea of Mike Vrabel being fired. Apparently, there have been some blow-ups between Amy Adams Strunk and Mike Vrabel in the past. So this idea that everybody says, Amy loves Vrabel so much she won't, that's not what I heard. I think what Mike Vrabel's doing is Mike Vrabel is telling the Titans, this is what I want for us to be successful, or I don't want to be here anymore. And what you want to know, what you're going to try to ask me to tell you, is something that hasn't been decided yet, which is what's going to happen. Vrabel goes to ownership and says, this is not working between us. This plan that you've laid out, this collaboration, while in theory it sounds good, and I tried to play nice with it the first year, but this does not work for me. I do not think that we can be successful doing this. Now what? And it really feels like Mike Vrabel's willing to get fired over this. So I don't know what's going to happen. I've told you, I think Vrabel, and again, I actually, when I wrote down all throughout the day, what all had happened, at 10:38 a.m., at 11:09, Will Levis says Mike Vrabel will let them know. I wrote that in blue because I have my own opinions in red, and it's really hard to separate those right now, to tell you, this is my opinion, this is what we know. This is what a league source told me. This is what's being reported. This is what's, and so it's completely color coordinated here, but it just seems like there's an awful lot of smoke, which I even said last week when Vrabel said, of course I want to be here. I think that it has to do with the way that Rand runs the business side of what he does, as opposed to his ability to scout and evaluate players. Though I did not hear anybody compliment Rand's ability to scout and evaluate players. I think the issues are more with the day-to-day work of how Rand does the business. His business. And then again, I told you guys, and I think Joe Rexrode probably heard the same thing, because he wasn't willing to share what he had heard on the midday show today. But I heard that there was a chance. I heard from somebody today who told me that they thought last night they thought Mike Vrabel was getting fired. That just like how Arthur Smith got fired last night, or technically in the wee hours of the morning today, they thought Mike Vrabel was getting fired last night. And so that's where we are with there being no resolution. And every possible resolution of the, I think what they should do, probably makes things too simple without recognizing what is lost on the other end of it. I don't know what Vrabel would go for on the trade market, but it's not as simple as just trading a player prior to the trade deadline. We'd like Johnny. Okay, we'll give you a second-round pick for it. Okay, sold. Can't do that with a coach. It is infinitely more complicated, which makes it hard. Then there's the position that Vrabel's demands put the Titans in. If the Titans acquiesce to what Vrabel wants, now what are they going to do with Rand Carthon? What are they going to tell Rand Carthon? And I think any time that these kind of big decisions have to get made, as hard as it is both to hear as a fan, and I have the same anxieties about this organization that you all do. In fact, I'm infinitely more pessimistic. You guys look at Peter Skoronski and you think this guy is going to go right to the Hall of Fame. I thought he played better yesterday. I also thought Andre Dillard played better yesterday, and I'm not investing big time hopes into him. But the anxiety of what's going to happen, who's going to be the coach, who they should get, all of that, I get it. Because I've got it too. I want answers to those questions. But if I were running that organization, the one thing I would do is I would really think about it before I act. Because there's more strategy to this than just, we don't want him here anymore, it's time to make a change. Ron Rivera in Washington, that's easy. They knew for weeks they were going to fire Ron Rivera today, and they did, which is why they had this big search committee that was ready to go the second they announced it. It's not that simple here, especially if you want to trade him. But that's where we are right now. Vrabel most likely is meeting with ownership as we speak because Vrabel has demands as to what he wants out of the organization going forward. How ownership responds to that, I don't know, but we probably will know soon enough. Vrabel did not have his end of the season media availability, which was shocking. And by the way, I could not believe that Mike Vrabel, and I don't cover the games, and I'm not ever going to cover the games on a consistent basis, so don't say, why don't you do it, Jared, because I'm not going to. But I could not believe that after all the rumors and reports that were coming out, and again, this isn't like how Terry McCormick asked the other day when he was like, well, there's some stuff on social media. And I'm like, social media? It's in the Washington Post. That's not social media. But there are reports from Adam Schefter and NFL Network and all this stuff, and they didn't ask him a single question about it yesterday afternoon. I could not believe that they didn't ask him a single question. And so I texted Joe about it, about the capital J journos not asking Vrabel any questions about the number one topic surrounding the team right now. And Vrabel was like, oh, well, we'll ask those questions tomorrow. Well, there might not be a tomorrow. 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Trading Mike Vrabel is not as easy as you think. There are choices that have to be made if that is what you want to do. We'll go over those choices next, because a lot of people think that it's just simple. They just trade him to the Patriots. It's not as simple as that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to you as we always do. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. When it comes to the NFL playoffs, and you've got to win one game at a time. But when you bet the NFL playoffs on FanDuel, one game can mean a lot of wins. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and they're my official sportsbook app. And they have all of your favorite bets, like money line, spread, and plus all sorts of prop bets. I feel very confident this week in Tampa Bay beating Philadelphia, and very confident this week in Cleveland beating Houston. I feel confident in those two. Then again, I felt confident in the Jags. Right now, every day there's an NFL playoff game. FanDuel is giving all customers a no-sweat same-game parlay. That means when you combine all your bets for a chance at a bigger payday, you'll get bonus bets back if your SGP doesn't win. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM if you don't already have an account and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issues non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund is $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions do apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Mike, you made a comment during all that that's kind of getting parsed here, talking about.
Who's parsing it, Gentry? Well, then ask the question, Jared.
The question, when you said that other organizations don't do things as well as the Patriots, and that you know because you've been there, were you referring to this organization?
They've won six Super Bowls in 20 years. That's what I was alluding to. You know what I mean? I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's just extremely, you know, a lot of success. And, you know, and I guess just probably having talked to, you know, Bill and, you know, Mr. Kraft and the coaches I know they're on staff, I guess that was just my way of, you know, bringing them good luck on Sunday. No, I mean, just the amount of success that they had there, that was the whole message was just for myself and the former players and everything, just to not take things for granted. Just the because, you know, I got traded myself and then went to a team that went 6-10, and it was like, you know, where you're just trying to find ways to win other than knowing that you're going to win when you show up. It was my whole intent of saying that you know, they've had it pretty good there for 20 years, 6 Super Bowls and however many else they went to.
That was Vrabel earlier in the year. Boy, he was not happy with me over that. And I wonder if it's because, you know, hit a little bit of that truth and you get a little bit of that truth and then who knows. But a lot of people are saying we should trade Vrabel. We should trade Vrabel for a first and a third round pick. And I'm like, okay, to who? Because there has to be a dance partner here. Now, I have been told by a league source, watch out for Washington. Keep them in mind, just like we would the Patriots. But let's use the Patriots as the example here. In previous times, the Titans could allow Mike Vrabel to interview with the New England Patriots, assuming that they work out trade compensation. It would be just like allowing a player to seek out a trade. Except that the Titans can't interview anybody for the position. They can't consider anybody else until it's vacant. And so you want to trade to the Patriots. Well, first, in order for them to trade him to the Patriots, they would have to fire their coach. They'd have to fire Bill, which I think they're going to, but they certainly haven't done yet. So that's the first step that makes it a little complicated, right? If you're trading a quarterback, you don't have to interview 2 external minority quarterbacks before trading for a quarterback. You do for a coach. If you're trading for a quarterback, you don't have to trade the quarterback that you have in this moment. You can put them both on your team. You can't have 2 head coaches. So if you want to trade Vrabel, you have to wait for everybody else to do their business. Whereas today, Washington is requesting meetings with all of these different candidates. Now, there is a difference between an in-person interview and a virtual interview. You can virtual interview whoever you want if you have a job opening. You cannot have an in-person interview with anybody in the NFL until after the divisional round of the playoffs if that person is with a team. So, for instance, somebody who's not with a team, you could interview. And that would check the box as far as the Rooney Rule is concerned. But in order to do any of that, you have to not have a head coach. That's a little complicated. So if you really want to trade Vrabel, you have to wait for the team that's going to trade for him to fire their coach. Then that team, which you have no control over, has to want Vrabel. Vrabel has to want to coach there. Then, after that, you work out the compensation, but you have to know who you want to hire, but you also have to interview other candidates, and you have to hope that the candidates that you want are still available with all the time that it takes to wait for the other team to decide what they're going to do so that they can hire and then trade for Vrabel. It's not as simple as it used to be. That being said, where there's a will, there's a way. They could do this. The question is, how big's the list? And so there are choices that have to be made if you really, really, really want to trade Mike Vrabel. If they don't think that the relationship can continue, if they have this meeting with Vrabel and he says, I want a czar of football that is above me and Rand Carthon, and Amy Adams Strunk is thinking, I'm not going to pay somebody else $3 million when I'm already paying you God knows how much money, and I'm already paying him, and I'm paying J-Rob. I'm not doing that. Well, then it's probably not going to work out between Mike Vrabel and the Titans. So then your choices are to fire him or to wait and see if you can trade him. And if you can't, then firing him and then paying his contract. You're going to be very careful about that. If you fire him today, you get almost the same start everybody else has. The Chargers can start asking to meet with people. The Commanders can ask to meet with people. The Falcons are asking to meet with people. You can fire Vrabel today and join in that group. But if you want to trade him, you have to wait. And you got to wait a while. And so that's the first choice that I would make, which is, are you willing to get rid of Vrabel if you get nothing in return? That's the first choice. And I don't know the answer to how you all feel. For me, I've said, I would clean house at the end of the year. And as much as I would love a first-round pick for Mike Vrabel, and I do feel like Vrabel's value is probably in the first-round pick range, if it were an open competition and all the teams could bid on him and you didn't have to worry about satisfying the Rooney Rule and everything else, I do think that Vrabel, the bidding would be pretty high for Mike Vrabel. But the rules just don't allow it to be as simple as it should be. And I understand it. I get it. So that's the first thing. Do you hold on to Vrabel in hopes of, retaining his value? Or do you say, you know what? We may lose out on a first round pick for Vrabel, but we want to make sure we get our coach. Then you have to make sure that you can get your coach, whomever that may be. Bobby Slowick, Ben Johnson, Dan Quinn, Jim Harbaugh, whoever it may be, you have to be sure that you're going to be able to get your coach. Or you're going to have a list of like 6 coaches. And you're going to have to say, okay, if Atlanta hires our first choice, how do we feel about our second choice? If Carolina hires our second choice, how do we feel about our third choice? If Washington hires our third choice, how do we feel about our fourth choice? And then you have to say, okay, is our fourth choice, who we are going to give a 6-year contract to, do we like our fourth choice more than Mike Vrabel? So as easy as it is to say, trade him and hire, one guy texted into the text line and said, trade him for Belichick straight up, and then put Belichick at defensive coordinator and hire Bobby Slowick. Whoa. First of all, in order to do that, the Patriots have to want Vrabel. Vrabel has to want to go to the Patriots. The Patriots have to interview 2 external minority candidates. You have to interview 2 external minority candidates. You have to wait until the divisional round of the playoffs in order to be able to do that. They have to wait until the divisional round of the playoffs in order to do that so that they can then interview Vrabel, who's currently under contract with you. And then you have to hope that Bobby Slowick is still available and will take your job at that point in time, and that Belichick will agree to a demotion. Now, how many of those things are there in there where, well, they're not going to say yes to that, and then all of a sudden that whole plan gets thrown off the train tracks? It's a lot more complicated than it's made out to be, which does give Vrabel some leverage here with the Titans, which is if they've got a list of guys that they'd say, hey, we'd be okay with these guys as our coach over Mike Vrabel, then they can let Vrabel sit there in the back and twiddle his thumbs for 3 weeks while they try to figure out what they're going to do with the coaching position. But then they could come back and say, Mike, you're the coach. And I'm not sure how that would go over. So it is complicated. And that's where they stand. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get right to your phones. We got a bunch of phones. 615-737-1025. Again, as we await for Black Monday for the Titans to give us a definitive answer about the coach one way or another. And then there's the question of the general manager. Is he safe in all of this? Should he be safe in all of this? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Mike, there's been a lot of, I guess, stuff on social media, reports from outside that say, talk about your relationship with Rand, your, perceived unhappiness or whatever here. Do you have to address those types of things with the players? Because most players are on social media and whatnot today.
No, I don't. I don't, because, again, if we believed everything that was on social media, it'd be Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and there's no tooth fairy and all that. So I really have never responded to any of those, and we're not going to start now. I know where we're at as an organization. I'm excited to build this thing and to fix this thing and get it to where we want it to be, to win championships with Ran and Chad and A-Rob and a coaching staff and everybody. I mean, that's what our goal is. So, but no, the social media and where that is, and I can't focus on that.
That was Vrabel last week. And again, the report from a league source that I talked to says Vrabel wants a czar of football to be in charge of him and Ran Carthon. Vrabel does not want to be general manager. Vrabel does not want final say. What does that mean for Ran Carthon? And there's no way in my head that I can couch the idea of the Titans adding somebody to be in charge of him and Ran Carthon that would be anyway not a demotion for Ran Carthon. There's no way I can see it that doing this would not be some sort of a slight on Ran Carthon. Well, that's not really fair. The problem is this is the NFL, and the NFL ain't about fair. If the Titans really want to keep Mike Vrabel, this would be the way to do it. One texter asks, what would you rather want to see happen? Mike Vrabel's demands, reasonable or unreasonable, or Amy Adams Strunk's decisions, reasonable or unreasonable? And quite frankly, I'd rather see Vrabel's demands come to fruition because I do think the Titans need some experience in there. I mean, I think the Titans need somebody who's got final say on the roster, on decisions. Just because somebody has final say doesn't mean that they can't take the input of others. But I think they need somebody with that, and I don't think that person should be Ran. And I don't trust Amy's decisions all the time. See, here's the problem, right? I have no faith in Ran Carthon. I have a little faith in Mike Vrabel. I think Vrabel is probably overrated as a coach, and I think I was one of the people that for a long time did a lot of the overrating. When he's got A.J. Brown, he can win some games. When he doesn't, he can't. Okay? Barry Switzer won a Super Bowl. You give him great players, they can do a lot of things. But I do think Vrabel knows how to coach. I don't, like what I've seen out of this past year, I haven't seen a lot that gives me confidence in Ran Carthon. I know you guys see Tajay Spears, and you think he must be the greatest general manager who ever lived. I get it. And I think Spears and Henry would be a great duo next season. I do not ever see Spears being a 3-down back. But that's a different discussion. But I haven't seen anything that gives me confidence that Ran Carthon can run this kind of operation. I mean, what we're talking about is if Vrabel were to go and Ran were to be given full authority of the football team, he would be getting promoted and then hiring a coach who works for him. You would essentially be making Ran Carthon the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar operation, and I don't think Ran Carthon is good enough to do that. And I haven't seen anything in this past year that makes me think he can do that. So if you're the Titans, you're in a tough spot because if Vrabel has all these demands and he's not going to want to be back if you don't do them, you going to give Ran a promotion and then let him go hire a coach to a 6-year contract? Then what are you going to do there? And so I just don't trust the decisions the Titans have made because those decisions, like firing Malarkey the way they did, firing Robinson the way that they did, hiring Ran the way that they did, those decisions have all been kind of bad. Even if the Malarkey decision is accepted because Vrabel might be a better coach, which is up for debate, but Vrabel might be a better coach, that's the ends justify the means, and I don't believe in that. I'm a process person. If somebody has a good process, not all the time will they get the result they want, but 75, 80% of the time, they'll get the result they want. I think the Ravens are a perfect example of an organization that has a great process. They never fully gave in to Lamar. As much as they were told they had to give in to Lamar, they didn't. When the Ravens make a decision, it is a calculated choice. Ozzie Newsome moves upstairs a little bit, and their handpicked guy, Eric DaCosta, picks up without missing a beat. The Ravens don't just fire coaches every 5 minutes. And so if it were the Ravens' choices, yeah, I'd say, okay, let's go with that. This with the Titans, I feel like their choices are like throwing darts. Sometimes I feel like their choices are like broken clocks. They're right twice a day. And so, again, you ask me what would I rather see happen? I guess I'd rather see Vrabel's demands because I'd like an experienced football guy to come in here and oversee both of them. And that may mean that the overseer comes in and says, why did you hire this guy to be your offensive line coach? He's got no experience in the NFL. That's fine. But I don't have a problem with that. Texter into the text line says, it doesn't make any sense as far as the Rooney Rule is concerned. Please, when it comes to explaining why the Titans could not go with a sham search, explain why they couldn't do that. I guess they could. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think an organization that's being sued over sham searches probably isn't interested in putting on more searches that look like shams. Texture says, Vrabel knows how to motivate. That is not coaching. He is horrible at delegating and trusting his guys with delegation, and that is an important part of being a head coach, especially if you're a defensive guy. I think Vrabel's best skills are motivation. I think Vrabel delegates to his assistant coaches. I mean, he's not calling the plays for Tim Kelly. But I would agree. I think Vrabel's a little too hands-on. Sometimes. Jeff from Hendersonville says, Carthon comes across as a BSer to me. I've had the same thoughts. Texture says, if Amy doesn't get this figured out, the Titans will lose a great coach. Vrabel has done more with less than most. This franchise, again, will be a bottom dweller for years. I'm not convinced that the Titans aren't a bottom dweller right now. But stop giving me the Vrabel has done more with less. Where was yesterday's effort all year from the Titans? Where was that offensive line performance all year? What got into that team yesterday? I almost wonder, I truly believe that the Gentry Estes question and Vrabel's response, that did have something to do with the way the team played on Sunday. That, and I think Derrick Henry set the tone, and I think Derrick's teammates didn't want to let Derrick down. 615-737-1025. We're back to your phones next. Here on Black Monday, again, we are awaiting the latest on Mike Vrabel. And is he going to be the coach next season? Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
We are also watching the status of Mike Vrabel, the Tennessee Titans head coach. He's going to meet with ownership at some point, probably today. And we'll see what this means about his future. There's going to be some hard questions. There's going to be some hard discussions. We do not know how it is going to end. I think it's fair to say it is uncertain whether or not Vrabel will be the head coach going forward.
Did you see Josina Anderson's report today? I talked to a league source who said it's 50-50. Thanks, Josina. That is like, I just want to get in there too with all of this. Phones, I promised, 615-737-1025, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Ed has been waiting patiently and is up next here. Go ahead, Ed.
Jared, there's two scenarios here. One, do the Titans want Vrabel? Or two, if Vrabel's under contract, he can't go anywhere. If the Titans want to keep him, he's here. He's stuck here. He doesn't have the ability to make demands. He's won 13 games over the last 2 years. This team just won 13 games this year alone. What do you mean? He doesn't have any demands. He's lucky to keep his job, man. What are you talking about?
Well, that's not totally true, right? Vrabel could quit, and then the Titans would have the rights to Vrabel, and he wouldn't get paid, and so that wouldn't be very advantageous. That wouldn't be very advantageous for him. Thank you, Ed. That wouldn't be very advantageous for him, but in theory, then the Titans would have to still go find another coach, and then Vrabel could want to come back a year later, kind of like Sean Payton, and then they could work out a trade, but then it gets very complicated. I mean, I think if Vrabel doesn't want to be back here, it's really hard to force him to stay. Right? It's like, nope, you're our coach, like it or not. And now you know that you've got an employee that hates the collaboration process that you've put together. Like, it's very complicated there. As far as the Vrabel doesn't deserve to have demands, I am actually on Vrabel's side. For this, like, not Vrabel's side of Vrabel needs to stay and Vrabel's a great cut. No, that's not where I'm not his side. I'm on Vrabel's side from this standpoint. That is, if Mike Vrabel thinks the current setup with Ran Carthon in place where he is and there being no definitive football voice within the organization, if his belief is that they can't win that way, he needs to voice that to ownership. And it sounds like that's what he's doing. That I don't have a problem with. The other thing that I do think is fair when it comes to Vrabel is I hear a lot of people saying, well, he's only won, what did the caller say, 13 games over the last 2 years. They lost their last 7 in a row last year and then this year. I do not blame the 7 in a row on Vrabel. I didn't blame the 7 in a row on Vrabel last year, and so I'm not going to retroactively go back and blame him for that now. That's like Amy Adams Strunk giving John Robinson a contract extension, and then when people celebrated the John Robinson firing, talking about Isaiah Wilson. Well, she already knew that when she gave him a contract extension. The only things that were different between John Robinson's contract extension and John Robinson's dismissal was that Farley didn't work out as they thought he was going to. Radens didn't work out as they thought he was going to, though Radens might be the best offensive lineman on the team right now. And the A.J. Brown trade. That's it. Don't hold Vic Beasley against John Robinson because you extended John Robinson well after they signed Vic Beasley. So don't hold that one against him. And so I don't hold the 7 games against Vrabel. The 6-10 this year, that is on Vrabel. The Andre Dillard experiment and the fact that Vrabel wouldn't move off of Andre Dillard very early in training camp when it was obvious that Andre Dillard sucked, that's on Vrabel. The coaching staff, that's on Vrabel. The run defense, that's on Vrabel. But I don't worry about what happened last year. That's not Vrabel's fault. PJ is up next here on our program. Has been waiting patiently. What's up, PJ?
Hey, what's going on, Jared? Hey, I just heard from an NFL employee today. I got 2 things. First thing, an NFL employee today told me that he feels very strongly about Vrabel coming to
You
New
tell me
England.
more about the employee. I got to know more about this.
He's a janitor. He's a facilities manager at Gillette. Okay, you got me. Is that how easy it is to report that? But I'm saying that jokingly. But secondly, how complicated do you think Bill Belichick's contract is that would make it a challenge to get Vrabel up there? Also, with Vrabel being under contract, do you see any trade happening, or do you even see that happening at all?
Did you listen to a single thing I said in the last segment?
Sort of. I was on my way getting out of work coming here, but I did want to hear it.
Okay. So trading, thank you, PJ. Trading is very difficult. If you want to trade, you have to wait 2 weeks. You cannot, before anybody tells you what you can and cannot do, this is the rule. And I looked it up yesterday, and I even clarified with people yesterday that would know about the rules. You cannot have any in-person interviews with NFL employees of teams until after the divisional round of the playoffs. You can have virtual meetings with those people, but you cannot meet them in person. In order to hire a head coach, you must interview 2 external minority candidates. So the Patriots would have to fire Belichick, would have to wait until the divisional round of the playoffs, and interview 2 external minority candidates. Now, are the Patriots going to take the Rooney Rule seriously, or are they not going to take it seriously? I don't know. But they have to do that. Again, they could interview Derek Mason from MTSU if they wanted to, but then everybody would know it's a sham, and trust me, that would come up. So the Patriots would have to wait 2 weeks before they could even start the process if they wanted Vrabel as their head coach. Then you could trade Vrabel to the Patriots. That wouldn't be that difficult. But then what would you do? Now you've got to start your process. You trade Vrabel, and from the second you trade Vrabel, you now have to start from scratch, and you've got to interview 2 external minority candidates, plus hope that the guy that you want is still available and still wants to join your team. And again, I talked to a league source this week who told me that the Titans job is just not very attractive right now compared to the other jobs, not based on ownership, but based on the talent that is available. And for all you people that just love Will Levis up and down, and I like Levis, but I liked Levis coming out. I liked Levis when they drafted him. I liked Levis when they started him. And I like Levis now. I haven't changed. I never thought Will Levis was a bad draft choice. And I never thought that Will Levis was for sure a franchise quarterback. I have stayed the same. And I am still the same right now. Which is I like Levis, but I have no idea if Levis is going to be a franchise quarterback. But it is not a good sign if Mike Vrabel thinks Will Levis is a franchise quarterback. It's not a good sign if he wants out of here or he's willing to be out of here that he would think that Levis is a franchise quarterback. Because if you think you have a franchise quarterback, you're not trying to leave that job. You're not trying to leave the Chargers if you've got Justin Herbert. You are not trying to leave that job. It'd be like trying to leave the Texans. You sure you want to do that? Because the next 15 years with C.J. Stroud might be pretty good. And so keep that in mind too, because again, the league told us what they thought of Levis in April of last year when nobody, including you, was willing to draft him in the first round. You drafted a freaking guard ahead of a franchise quarterback if that's what you think Levis is. Nobody drafts a guard ahead of a franchise quarterback, so you didn't think he was a franchise quarterback. Levis showed some flashes, but Levis, again, he didn't have the season C.J. Stroud had. For whatever reason that may be, he didn't have that season. So all these other potential coaches, if you were to move on from Vrabel, that would be interested in taking your job, they may not like Levis as much as you all do either. Because they didn't like Levis that much in the spring when he was out there for everybody. They weren't that interested in Levis. So just keep that in mind there about, your job. And if you trade Vrabel, then you want to get your guy, but does your guy want to come to you? because, again, you've had to wait, and they may not like Levis as much as you guys like Levis. 615-737-1025. One texter says, my question is, when does trading come back? I know there's a trade deadline in season. Does that stay in effect until after the Super Bowl, or is it once the season is over, you can start trading? You cannot trade players until the league year has started. So if, for instance, the Titans and the Saints agreed to a trade, it would not go into effect until March 13th or whenever that is. But that's for players. For coaches, I think you can trade now. It's just a long, arduous process in order to be able to do that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next here on the program, I really have thought the Titans should go this route for a while, and it feels like all of today's reporting just confirms it. There's one real answer the Titans probably need to go to, and I know they don't want to do it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios on Black Monday, where Arthur Smith has been let go by the Falcons, Ron Rivera has been let go by the Commanders, the Panthers are starting over, and yes, we are waiting on Bill Belichick in New England and Mike Vrabel with the Titans. It has been widely reported that the Titans are having organizational meetings, Vrabel with ownership, and we will see what comes of that. Adam Schefter saying that Vrabel could want out, ownership could want to fire Vrabel, or both. So who knows? I have reported that Mike Vrabel, according to a league source, was going to ownership today to demand that ownership install a president of football operations or somebody in a position above he and Rand Carthon to oversee the whole operation that does have final say on the football side of the team. Who knows how ownership will react? I certainly don't. It seems, regardless of whether this is direct or indirect, it does seem as if Mike Vrabel is not happy with the collaboration when it comes to Rand Carthon. I was told by a league source that Mike Vrabel was told when this whole process began that Ryan Cowden was going to be the general manager of the Titans, and then all of a sudden he was surprised to find out that the Titans had hired Rand Carthon. And that Vrabel may lack trust when it comes to the organization and the future of where they're going. Now, weeks and weeks and weeks ago, I don't even remember how long ago it was that the Titans played Jacksonville. And I told you guys at 5 o'clock on that Titans Monday, I said, if I owned this football team, I would be prepared to clean house at the end of the year. Move on from the coach, move on from the general manager, and move on from this fakakta collaboration system or whatever have you, whatever you want to call it. And today has just affirmed my belief. I told you after the Texans game that I would be doing it. That at the end of the year, there wouldn't be any convincing me of, well, they played really hard in that last game and knocked Jacksonville out of the playoffs, so are you sure you want to do that? No, we've decided that we're cleaning house. Sorry, it was a fun game yesterday, but it's time to move on. So that means that I am making choices. And here are the choices that I am willing to make, again, if I own the team. First off, I am willing to let Mike Vrabel go to the Patriots or the Commanders, the two rumored teams, as far as he is concerned, or I am willing to pay him to not work next year. Because I want to get on with my search. Now, I'd wait a couple of days. It wouldn't necessarily be right here, right now, here's a statement, Vrabel's out. But it would be, one way or another, Vrabel's gone. If the Patriots want to trade and we want to make a mockery of the Rooney Rule, I'm okay with that. I can take the hit for a day or two, and we can interview Lovie Smith and David Culley and make a total mockery of the process, and then trade and hire whatever, Bobby Slowick on the Monday after the divisional round, whatever. I'd be willing to do all of that if I felt like I could pull off a trade. I'd work it. But the second I pick up the phone, call New England and say, hey, would you be interested in Vrabel, is the second they're going to leak that I called. So it's going to be out there in the public. I'm just going to have to deal with it. And I would fire Rand Carthon. And here's why I would do this. Because I've seen too much and I've heard too much about the incompetence of this organization. And I don't know exactly where it lies. As far as, does it lie with the GM? Does it lie with the collaborative process? Does it lie with Vrabel? I don't know. And by cleaning house, I'm getting rid of all three. I'm getting rid of the collaborative process, I'm getting rid of the general manager, and I'm getting rid of the coach. That means I'm getting rid of the coaching staff, and that means I'm going to have to pay a lot of money. Because Vrabel's got a contract, and Rand's got a contract, and you're going to have to pay him. But that's what happens when you make impulsive mistakes in the NFL. I don't think the firing of John Robinson was an impulsive mistake, though it could have been. It could have been that she got so mad about getting middle fingered by the Eagle fans in the box while A.J. Brown was spanking the goalpost that she decided right then and there to pull the trigger. But I also think it was somewhat strategic, right? John Robinson had won 2 straight division titles. The Titans have been to the playoffs 3 years in a row. And the Titans looked like a lock to win the division and go back to the playoffs the next year. Can you really fire a general manager who's won 3 straight division titles? I was watching the game yesterday. The Miami Dolphins haven't won their division for 15 years. And if Robinson had just won against Jacksonville the next week, if they hadn't fired him, and they had just beaten that lowly Jacksonville team the next week, the Titans would have won 3 straight AFC Souths. So that was her opportunity. Can't fire Robinson after the year. Team might win too many games. So she took the shot when she had it. That was strike one. And that doomed the entire rest of the 2022 season. You missed the playoffs. Congratulations. Thank you. Then there's the hiring of the general manager. The Titans love keeping everything a secret. And I'm not sure why they have to do that, but they do. We were told that Mike Vrabel was going to be involved in the interview process of the next general manager. That would set up the dynamic that Vrabel, in some way or another, is in charge of the general manager or is at least involved in the guy's hiring. Later we found out that wasn't what happened. It was a shotgun marriage. It was a, Mike, you and you, Rand Carthon, will work together and bring us a great team. What are they supposed to say? No. Rand's going to turn down 1 of 32. Vrabel, who's essentially getting a promotion at this point, is going to say to the owner, no, don't do that. So they didn't. Vrabel tried it for a year, and clearly he doesn't like it. And I get it. But what's going to happen, what a lot of people think is going to happen, what a lot of people want to happen, is Mike Vrabel very well might get fired in the next 10 minutes. Mike Vrabel might already be fired now, and we just don't know it. I heard from somebody yesterday that they thought Vrabel was getting fired last night. Well, the natural response to that is, well, let's let Rand Carthon go hire a coach. So now I'm committing, if I do that, I'm committing another, 6-year contract for a coach and an entire coaching staff. And I'm letting Rand Carthon, a guy that Mike Vrabel is begging me, please get somebody else in here to be in charge of both of us. I'll take another boss. Another guy who could fire me. I'll take it just because I want somebody over Rand Carthon. And you're going to give that guy the keys to go sign a coach for 6 years. He's never hired a coach in his life. And you're going to promote him into that position to do it. And that just perpetuates, again, the moving target of bad decisions. I don't want that anymore. The Titans are in a spot where they can start over. You guys talk about cap space. I don't care about that because I don't think the cap's real. But the Titans don't have a lot of committed money for next year. And even some of the money that is technically committed, like Andre Dillard's $10 million salary, that's not going to be there. So they could, in theory, have even more money to go out and sign players. You want to give Rand Carthon all that money? And give him the power to sign those guys, which is not the power that you gave him when you hired him because it was supposed to be a collaborative process with Mike Vrabel? I don't. You have the 7th overall draft choice. Rand said last year when they were picking 11th that he didn't want to pick this high again. You're picking higher this year, picking at 7. You want the same guy that brought you a guard with the 11th overall pick, the same duo that brought you that guard. You want them to make that pick? I don't feel like I owe it to Rand Carthon to promote him and let him spend my resources. And apparently neither does Mike Vrabel. So instead of just this, well, we could do this or we could, why not start over? Why not start fresh? Why not say, hey, We're starting over. Everything we've done for the last 2 years has been a screw up. The extensions for Robinson and Vrabel, we got carried away with that 21 season. That was a mistake. Trading A.J. Brown, that was a mistake. Firing Robinson in the middle of the year, that was a mistake. We made too many big mistakes. Shotgun marriage for Vrabel and Carthon, that was a mistake. So let's start over. Let's take a deep breath, and let's bring in some people that know football, and let's get this figured out. And bring in a coach and bring in a general manager that we're not going to say right away, you got to go out and get us to the Super Bowl. No. But I want to see improvement in the football team. I want to see moves that don't have to be explained with an excuse. Oh, well, they couldn't get anybody better than Andre Dillard because they didn't. No. I think they should start over. And I don't think that the whole starting over and the dysfunction and the need to do all of that, I don't think that that is attached to a failure on Mike Vrabel's part or a failure on Rand Carthon's fault. But it is a failure of the process that landed them in the position that they are in now. It's time for a reset. It's time to start over. And that's why 6 weeks ago, whenever it was that first Jacksonville game, I said they need to start from scratch. I felt like that was the direction it was trending. The rest of the year has confirmed it. Today's news makes it seem even more necessary to pull the trigger on both. So why wait? Why wait? Why empower? Why promote when you don't have to? But I don't own the Titans. And they do. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your phones. 615-737-1025. Your reaction again. Still waiting word. Diana Rossini reported a couple hours ago that the Titan players and Titan coaches are waiting for word as to what's going to happen there. Not even they know. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game.
I don't want these, interactions between us to always feel like we got to take a negative turn. And, this should be a joyous moment for us to praise these kids. This is a moment these kids are going to see this, and this is a moment for them and their families to rejoice in, because it's only going to happen once. There'll be other times to critique what they've done. These kids haven't even stepped on the NFL field yet. So let's keep that in mind. This is a moment for them and their families to have something to be proud of and enjoy this moment.
If the NFL draft is the best night of their NFL career, they're not going to have a very good career.
That was the second night of the NFL draft. That was the first sign that this shotgun marriage between those two might not work out. They might not see eye to eye. And really, did you really think this shotgun marriage was going to work? And again, I was told by a league source that Mike Vrabel was told, or was at least under the impression, that Ryan Cowden was going to be the general manager of the Titans. Now, I don't really know Ryan Cowden, just other than just the typical pleasantries of, hey, I know who he is, he knows who I am, hey, that kind of thing. But I do think that Cowden would have really, understood Vrabel at the beginning, what he's about, how he does things, what he expects, that kind of stuff. But also, they would have been probably more aligned because Cowden would have known I'm only getting this job because they want me to work with Mike Vrabel. Whereas I'm sure Rand had this, when I'm GM, this is what I want to do. I'm not sure those things totally see eye to eye. But I did promise phones, so we'll go to them. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robert is up next here on the program. Go ahead, Robert.
Hey, big man. When you don't get along with anybody, it ain't everybody else's problem. It's your problem. Vrabel can't get along with nobody. When you wonder who the asshole in the room is, and you don't
Hey,
get along
can't
with
say that
everybody,
word. But I hear your point. Thank you for your call. I hear your point about it looks like Vrabel can't really work with anybody, right? There's the problems with him and Dean Pease, in which Dean Pease retired, and then as soon as Arthur Smith got a job, Dean Pease unretired. And then what Wesley Woodyard had to say about all of that and whatnot. Then there's Vrabel and Robinson. And again, I think Vrabel and Robinson got along. I still think Vrabel and Robinson, from what I hear, I think Vrabel and Robinson probably like each other still. But there were clearly some issues. Vrabel chucked him under the bus on the A.J. Brown thing. I don't blame Vrabel. Just based off of what I've heard, what I've experienced, and what I've seen when it comes to Rand Carthon, I don't blame Vrabel for having no faith in Rand. Some people just look strictly, and I get it, it's simple, it's easy. They just look right at players that are acquired. And they believe excuses. A lot of times it's because they want to believe excuses. You know how many people were tweeting me yesterday during the game about Peter Skoronski? Skoronski, and again, I didn't watch this game back, and I'm not going to, but Skoronski, by my count, had one really, really good block on the Derrick Henry touchdown run. Andre Dillard had a great block on a Tajay Spears run. In fact, Andre Dillard played really well the entire game yesterday. And I'm not getting overly excited about Dillard either. But it's because people want to believe that Skoronski was worth the pick at 11, which he wasn't. But people will want to believe that, so it's like, see, Jared, look at this, Jared, you see this, you that. But there's a general part to being general manager that is not just picking the players. Picking the players is the most important part, but there's a lot of other things that go on as far as being general manager is concerned. And I think that is what Vrabel's having a problem with and wanting somebody to oversee, maybe even more so than just the how they go about picking the players. If I had to guess based off of what I've been told. So I'm going to give Vrabel a pass in this regard. But I do think Vrabel is incredibly hard to work with. I had somebody at the Super Bowl tell me that knows Vrabel and Rand pretty well. I had somebody at the Super Bowl tell me the problem with Vrabel is that his BS meter is so high that he's constantly just trying to make sure you, like an assistant coach, you're not BSing him. which is great, except for the fact that it feels like Vrabel BS's us all the time. But that's an issue that he has. And I think Rand has got a little bit of a problem with that, in my experience. Which is why I'd start over. Then there's no worry about whose fault it was. It's both your fault. Move on. Bring in somebody with some experience that's run a football operation before, that knows what they're doing. Interview as hard as you can and decide from there. You know, I was wondering about this the other day, about how general managers don't get second chances in the NFL, and I've never really understood that. Because coaches, Dimitrov, the general manager in Atlanta, who Dan Quinn won those games with, nobody's interested in Mark Dominic at Tampa Bay. Nobody's probably interested in John Robinson, unless it's a way to save Belichick's job in New England, or if Vrabel's the coach up there and J-Rob's the GM. Nobody's interested in Bob Quinn. Why don't these guys get second chances? Coaches get second chances. And I can't wrap my head around that. And I would be interviewing if I owned the Titans and I was looking for a GM or a football czar or whatever it is Vrabel's demanding today. And I would love to interview people that have experience. And one question I'd ask is, why did it not work out wherever it was that you were GM first? Why did it not work out in Chicago? And if they give me an answer like, well, we were 4-3 and the running back broke a toenail, and then all of a sudden the guy's wife was sleeping with somebody and he had a problem, and then I don't want to hear that. What I want to hear is, I want to hear somebody that says, I made a massive mistake. I gambled on a quarterback and he didn't check all the boxes that I wanted, but we were on the clock and I felt like I could push it through, and that's what I want to hear. And what you learn from that mistake. I talked to a general manager last week on Sirius XM, Doug Whaley, the old Buffalo general manager. And I forget what team it was we were talking about. But we were talking about somebody who might lose their job. We were talking about the Bears. We're talking about Justin Fields and the number 1 pick. And Doug Whaley said to me, he goes, there are two choices here. There is the choice of drafting the quarterback at number 1 overall, or using that number 1 overall pick and turning that into like 9 picks like they did last year, which would be even more because Caleb Williams is a better prospect than Bryce Young. So trading it into all these assets to put around Justin Fields, who we know is never going to be a superstar. And what Doug Whaley said to me was, the reason I'm talking to you today is because I didn't get the quarterback situation figured out. I thought, he said, we could take a guy, and I think he was referring to Tyrod Taylor, but it could have been somebody else. I thought we could take a guy and put great pieces around him and win. And again, that's what he said. That's why I'm talking to you today. So, that's part of the job, I guess, here. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in here on Stillman and Company, we will continue to give you the latest info and the latest updated information. And there is something so far today that I am pretty surprised about, that I do want to get to, and we'll do that coming up next here on Stillman and Company. Tune into 93.3 Classic Hits Thursday night for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders are at home facing Louisiana Tech. Pregame starts at 7:30. Tip-off is at 8. Coverage is also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com.
let's just play the hypothetical game. Let's say Mike Vrabel's relieved of his duties.
Wow, Taylor's going to play the hypothetical game.
Yeah.
Let's go.
There's not a chance in hell that every team that has fired their coach is not interested in Mike Vrabel. That'd be the Falcons, that'd be the Panthers, that'd be the Chargers and the Raiders, that'd be the Bears, that'd be literally everybody.
Yeah.
And I know the Raiders and the Bears haven't made their decision yet, but Mike Vrabel is that type of dude. The Patriots would also be a big key one, have their prodigal son come back home after being inducted in the Player Hall of Fame. But I think it would be a massive disservice to the city of Nashville if he was not.
That was Taylor Lewan earlier today on Kay Adams' show. And I love this. Every single job will be interested in Mike Vrabel if the Titans move on from Vrabel. Maybe. But the only two I've heard right now are Washington and New England. Those are the two. And in New England, they had been talking for months about how Gerard Mayo's the guy. They're just going to promote Gerard Mayo. And then apparently last week, well, maybe they won't. I am surprised. I said there's one thing I'm kind of surprised by. I am surprised that here we are at 5:30 on Black Monday and we don't have a resolution. I am pretty surprised by that because Will Levis said, my paper of my timeline of today, at 11:09 a.m., Will Levis said, or a little bit before 11:09 a.m., Will Levis says that Mike Vrabel told them that he'll let them know what happens. If Mike Vrabel had told the players what had happened, everybody would know. Player tells an agent, player goes to Twitter, agent goes to Ian Rappaport. That doesn't take very long. So it seems like Mike Vrabel is still probably meeting with Titans ownership, or they had their meeting and they decided, okay, let's let everybody sleep on the discussions that we had, and then let's come back and discuss it. I couldn't tell you which one it is. I just know this. I've heard a lot of smoke over the last couple of days. I am at least a little bit surprised we don't have a resolution right now. And I thought when I started the show at 2 o'clock today, I thought the resolution was that Vrabel's going to get fired. And I still don't think Vrabel will be the coach of this team in 2024. But I am surprised that here we are, 5:30, and we still don't have an answer. And Lord have mercy if the Titans ruin the national championship game for me by breaking some news like that. Texter into the text line says, you said firing Mike Vrabel gives Rand Carthon a promotion, but didn't they do the same thing last year with Mike Vrabel and this collaboration? They fired John Robinson and said, now you have a bigger voice in the decision-making. Now Mike Vrabel is walking away from his promotion saying, I don't want this collaboration process anymore. I just want a voice in the room. What am I missing? He is walking away from equal power to give it to someone else. Why doesn't he just say, let Rand Carthon run the show, and if it fails, then hire my guy? And the answer is because if it fails, people are going to blame him. I actually have sympathy based off of what I know, what I've been told by people I trust. I have sympathy for Mike Vrabel, a coach that I have hammered all year and who I think has serious problems. I think he's he's got some good things, but I think he's got some real bad problems as far as being a coach is concerned, and I would fire him. But you're making this sound like Mike Vrabel wanted them to fire John Robinson and run this collaboration process, and I don't think that's true. I think they fired John Robinson. They told Mike Vrabel, we want you to have an equal voice with the GM. We want you and the GM to see eye to eye. We want you guys to work together. And he thought it was going to be with Ryan Cowden, a guy he thinks he could work with. Just like there are people that I think I can do a radio show with. There are also people that I don't think I can do a radio show with. I've done a radio show before with Floyd Reese for 4 years or however long we did it, 5.5 years, whatever it was. And I knew right away. And he knew right away, which is why it worked. We knew before we were hired together, we knew that we could do a show together. Just like outside of the pregame shows, I've never done a show with Derek before. I know me and Derek could do a show together, and I know me and Derek would do a great show. There are other people that if you said, hey, Jared, you and Jim Bob over there are going to do a show together, and Jim Bob wants to talk baseball all the time. It's probably not going to work. Jim Bob is one of those guys that I only want to talk about facts. That's all I want. That's all speculation. I don't want to talk about speculation. It's sports radio, Jim Bob. That wouldn't work. And so they put this shotgun marriage together. And so after a year, Vrabel's like, I give it a chance, but this isn't working. This isn't. When we work out, guys, on Tuesday, I need Rand to do that. Do it right. That kind of vibe. And I told you, again, people got mad at me earlier today. It's how Rand operates that I think Vrabel wants somebody over. Just from some of the talks I've had. And people can get mad about that, but I'm just telling you what I heard. And yes, it would be a promotion if Vrabel leaves and the Titans say, all right, Rand, find us a coach. Because that wasn't the job that you hired Rand Carthon to do. And I don't think Rand deserves a promotion. Texter says, why do you want them to give up their trade collateral? You need to turn on your brain. Even if you don't think you can get much for Vrabel, you can get something. And that comes from Tyler. So here's the give and the take. These are all choices. If you outright fire Vrabel, you get to start where everybody else is. The Atlanta Falcons fired Arthur Smith yesterday. They started their search today. If you outright fire Vrabel, you get to start your search immediately. If you want to trade Vrabel and you're convinced New England or Washington will take him, if you want to go that route with Vrabel, you have to wait. You have to wait 2 weeks. You have to wait for the Patriots to get their minority hires done or minority interviews. You're going to have to wait for them to decide that they want Vrabel and work out a trade package with you if you want that to be the case. And then you have to then do your minority interviews and see if the guy you want wants to be your coach, or he might have already been hired by Carolina or Washington or Atlanta or the Chargers. And now you're stuck with no coach and you got a little compensation in return. And now you got to sign a guy to a 6-year contract to be your head coach that you didn't necessarily want to be your coach. I don't know if I like that idea. So that's why it's not as simple as, why can't you just trade Vrabel? It's not that simple. Texter into the text line says, Jared, you are the most wishy-washy person ever. You act like a player is supposed to come in the NFL and make the Pro Bowl or they are a bust. When Peyton Manning broke the record for interceptions as a rookie, it doesn't mean it was a bust. It takes players sometimes more than a year or two to adapt and make an impact. I'm guessing he's talking about Skoronski. When you draft a guard with the 11th overall pick, he better be really good right away. And that's not my logic. That's what Floyd Reese said on this program. And I think he had a pretty good understanding of all of that. Because he did it. If I can draft a guard, I can draft the guard, sit him on the bench, and expect him to be a starter. I can do that in the 4th or 5th round. That's what Benji Olsen did. And I ain't using the 11th overall pick on Benji Olsen. And Benji was a good Titan. But you don't use the 11th overall pick on that. And also, as far as the importance of guards, the best guard in the NFL is Quentin Nelson. He's been in the league for 6 years. He is a 6-time Pro Bowler. And his team is at home. The second best guard is Chris Lindstrom of the Atlanta Falcons. He's the highest graded by Pro Football Focus, and he makes the most money. And they're at home. Because guard's not that important. You know what position is important? And it's why Arthur Smith is also at home right now? Quarterback. They're not all the same. Guard is not that important of a position. It's like people think you can get starting immediate tackles in the third round. You can get Nicholas Pete Frere in the third round. An immediate starter at tackle goes 9th. Maybe. 615-737-1025 here on the Stillman and Company program. We're back to your phones here on what has been a very eventful Black Monday. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
So you want to be here next year? Of course I want to be here. Be here as long as we can win and long as we can, do this thing. And it's been great, but it also has been, just frustrating this year. And nobody wants to be where we're at.
That was Vrabel last week. And again, we are waiting on the white smoke to appear from St. Thomas Sports Park. And all I heard today from a league source was that Mike Vrabel wants the Titans to hire somebody over him and Rand, and that Vrabel does not want to be GM, does not want to have final say. He does not want that. And that Washington could be an option as well as New England for Vrabel. I was also told don't rule out Vrabel being fired, and that there have been some blow-ups in the past between Vrabel and Amy Adams Strunk. I actually talked to somebody who used to be in the organization, is not with the organization anymore, and is not in the league. And this was maybe weeks ago. And we were talking about Amy. And I was talking about the ownership group as a whole. Because I've been told one of the complaints by people inside the building, outside the building, is when you work for the Titans, it's not just one owner you work for. It's a bunch of people you work for. And that can be very frustrating at some point. I mean, I have a bunch of different bosses, but I really only deal with one person. And I prefer it that way. And I think all my bosses prefer it that way too. But I was talking to that person that used to be in the organization. And I was like, is this like the one person gets mad about something and then they want to fire this guy and then the others, have to stop that person, but then they kind of convince him and they said, dude, that family, they can just freaking flip on people. I think we saw it with Robinson and everything else, whatever. And they said, and Amy's that way too now. I said, really? Oh yeah. She said, don't let the team mom vibe thing fool you here. I said, okay. It reminded me of what Warren Moon said when they fired John Robinson, and he was like, well, I guess she's got some butt in her. And everybody laughed about him saying that. Again, I don't know Amy that well. I know her decent, I would say, I like Amy a lot. I do. And I think there's a lot of, this is such a wild stretch. Like I tell you what I'm telling you. There's other things I can't tell you that I've heard that even just kind of make me roll my eyes even further. Texter into the text line says, Amy needs to find another Floyd Reese that's been there, knows what the hell they're doing. Rand wasn't it, and if you keep Vrabel, you must find a Floyd Reese, and that is non-negotiable. That comes from Chris in Knoxville. I would tend to agree, except I do think that that's kind of putting a Band-Aid over all of it. Texter says, do you have to complete 2 minority hires if you decide on a minority coach before the beginning of the process? Now, that deep into the rules, I don't know. I just know that it needs to be 2 minority external candidates. Now, if you want to do what the Raiders did years ago when they hired John Gruden and they interviewed T. Martin, who was the offensive coordinator at the time at USC, for the head coaching position, a guy that was never going to get a head job in the NFL, being an OC in college. If you want to do that, be my guest. But I don't think the Titans, who have been sued by Ray Horton for doing just that, even though Ray Horton was technically not a Rooney Rule interview, Ray Horton, who was a terrible defensive coordinator, just figured that he deserved the opportunity to interview for the job, even though he had stunk as defensive coordinator. So they let him interview for it. They had already interviewed Terrell Austin to be the head coach. I believe he was the D coordinator in Detroit at the time. They had already interviewed Terrell Austin for that job. But Ray Horton sued him because Mike Mularkey went on a podcast and said, yeah, I already knew I was getting the job. And so I don't think the Titans can take the risk of just mailing in the external candidate interviews. If they're going to interview a coach and they're going to interview the minority candidates, it has to be somebody like Aaron Glenn of the Lions that has a legitimate chance at being a head coach in the NFL. Trent says, I believe I read that Belichick has a meeting with Robert Kraft on Wednesday. Could they be waiting to see if Belichick gets fired before trying to negotiate a trade for Vrabel? I guess they could do whatever they want. I have no idea about Kraft and Belichick's meetings other than Belichick said today that it was going to happen. I don't understand why they'd wait till Wednesday to meet. Why not meet tomorrow? Why not meet today? Why are you going to wait till Wednesday? But that's their business, not mine. Texter says, could they be taking their time to announce anything because they are planning on firing both of them and knowing that firing Carthon would cause a world of backlash? That comes from Andrew from Dallas. Does it matter? The Houston Texans fired Lovie Smith last year. They won and done them. And at that time, Stephen A. Smith went on television. Second year in a row, they fired a black coach after having him for 1 year, David Culley. And I thought Culley did a good job. And then Lovie. And they fired both of them. And Stephen A. Smith, the most prominent voice at ESPN, went on TV and said, when it comes to the Texans, black coaches do not apply. And I thought, when I saw that on First Take, I'm like, man, the Texans are a marked organization. There is no way people are going to want to work for them. They're such a clown show. How are they going to be able, they say they want D'Amico Ryans. How are they going to get him after the way they've treated Lovie Smith and David Culley? And that didn't stop D'Amico Ryans from taking that job. And that didn't stop the Texans from turning it around in 1 year. So when people talk about the backlash, I'm like, what kind of backlash here? People being mad about it for 3 hours? Because normally what happens is if a team makes an unpopular decision, people are mad about it for a very limited period of time, and then everybody moves on. And I don't see this being any different in that regard. I do hope the Titans spare us a coaching change or a coaching announcement during the national championship game tonight. I am incredibly excited for the national championship game, and that is coming up at 6:30 on 94.9 The Fan, and we'll pick it up in progress at 7 o'clock right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game, as we've got the Commodore Hour coming up next. But ladies and gentlemen, just like a tornado watch, the conditions are right. We are in the middle of a coach watch. Stillman and Company, we'll see you all tomorrow too.